Do you know what's hiding behind colorful packaging of unhealthy food? Big food companies target children with unhealthy packaged foods that hide high levels of sugar, salt, and fat, which could lead to heart disease, diabetes, and hypertension. But the truth is hidden from consumers. Front of package warning labels are a proven solution to help consumers make informed decisions. The government must act now. We have the right to know what's in our food. Demand front of package warning labels. Sign the petition on heala.org, HEALA.org, by 30 September.
Get ready, South Africa! 12,000 athletes from every corner of the country will hit the ground running in the 5th edition of the Hollywoodbets Durban 10 Kilometer. A thrilling road race starting and finishing at Hollywoodbets Kingsmead Stadium. It's more than a race. It's all about community, good vibes, and rising to the challenge. Catch the action live on Saturday, 30th of August at 7 a.m. on SABC2, SABC Plus, and across SABC radio stations. Hashtag Let's Run and feel the energy. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
Coming up in sports this hour, Bafana squad named for September World Cup qualifiers. Kipchoge feeling the pressure ahead of Sydney Marathon, and Medvedev fined for US Open antics. More details at 3:30.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So, of course, you know, we spoke about going into, yesterday's show, made the point about the Kaizer Chiefs Mamelodi Sundowns game. Now, we know it ended in a goalless draw. And we know the crowd was 75,000 people, but also that the game had to be postponed or delayed, by 15 minutes because of the crowds, and the official match commissioner made the point that people were coming from work and struggling to get in. For all intents and purposes, things went off well, no problems at all. But I just do wonder, how is it possible that this game could not have been played on the weekend, considering the unique transport problems that fans in the country get to watching a big game like this? We've already had, a long time ago, the Ellis Park disaster example. And since then, I understand that the Chiefs-Pirates game was established the norm that it cannot be played on a weeknight. But I mean, in many ways, the Sundowns game now has rivaled the Chiefs-Pirates games for rivalry in terms of importance. So you just wonder. Some may say, well, there are other issues like the MTN games, and I don't know. But the reality is, thank goodness, everything was fine. But you just still wonder. The fact that they had to postpone things or delay by a while says that they got it slightly wrong. Well, that's my point. What's yours? You certainly can comment. My name is Ashraf Garda, and welcome to the show. Welcome to the National Pulse. 3 hours, as always, of reflecting on the biggest issues in the country, in the world, and it all starts now. When I say starts now, you can call in as well. We won't take your calls right away, but as soon as we can get a chance, 086 0002032, and then WhatsApp 0614 104 107. Text messages, please, 30, and then voice notes, 30 seconds maximum, please. Otherwise, it becomes just far too long. Tweet, hashtag the National Pulse, tag SFM Radio, and do tag me. Now, let's get to the first issue. We spoke about this yesterday when news came through that the Equality Court had ruled effectively against Julius Malema, and they found him guilty of hate speech. And that relates to pronouncements he made around 2022, in fact. And we chatted yesterday to the DA, and you can listen to that podcast as well in terms of how they see it. But we thought we need to get another perspective of it. Now, we were not able to, unfortunately, at this point in time, we may do it later on, speak to the EFF. But let's get an analyst's thoughts on this, because part of that he's been found... They found against Malema for hate speech and incitement to violence. So let's find out more about it from Professor Dirk Coetzee, who's a political analyst and professor in the Department of Political Sciences at UNISA. Prof. Coetzee, good to see you. We last met at the National Dialogue opening, right?
Yes, indeed, sir. Yes, that was quite a very interesting period. That
absolutely right. What do you? First of all, when you heard about the Equality Court ruling against Malema, what was your immediate reaction to it?
Well, I started to think immediately also to the Constitutional Court judgment, which was in a sense different from this one, and that was about the "Kill the Farmer, Kill the Boer" slogan or chant that he used, which was regarded as one should interpret it in a historical context. This one is therefore very similar, and that is that he asked or called for especially EFF supporters to kill the persons who were involved in that demonstration at the Brackenfell High School in 2020, or other persons that they regard as being racist towards the EFF. So there are, in terms of detail, I guess there will be differences in the context, as well as what was the meaning of the two different ones. But I immediately thought, what's the relevance of this judgment in relation to the first judgment?
Well, perhaps you may want to answer that, because it's interesting. I link the two myself even yesterday, right? So in linking the two, what did you come up with in terms of what are the contrasts? Why would the Constitutional Court rule on one in one way and the Equality Court ruling differently, where both may call upon looking at context rather than a literal interpretation of what was said?
Yes, I think if one has to find a difference between the two, then I think the latter one at the school was more directed towards very specific persons, although he made that call actually 2 years later at a provincial event of the EFF in the Western Cape. But there he referred to persons who were involved in that school and who confronted the EFF demonstrators or those who wanted to go to the school. And then at the same time made a more of a general comment about white persons in general who they regard as have engaged in racist attitudes and activities towards the EFF. So it is the first one, the court says, well, it has a historical context. The second one, I would say, has less of a historical context. It's very much based on that specific incident. And that as a result of that, he made these responses or comments. I think from a broader perspective, also you refer to the national dialogue. I think this is on top of a topic that really should be very much become part of this dialogue of how to deal with issues like that, and that under which conditions it will be acceptable or unacceptable to make statements of this, whether it is from a historical perspective or about where we stand at the moment. Because there's obviously many incidents that the Human Rights Commission must deal with, and I'm not sure whether they have a good guidelines from these legal precedents, whether how to deal with that.
But fine, let's just jump to the national dialogue then. I mean, so let's just say this comes up as a conversation, and I expect it to do so, right? What currency will the findings or the recommendations of a consultative process at the national dialogue have on what the law says?
Well, I think, the law is never completely cast in stone. The law is also interpreted in terms of the values of the day, of the particular period, and look at old constitutions who have been over time reinterpreted in order to be in line with the current value system. So if there is ultimately understanding, a more of a consensus, and I think it's unlikely to have an absolute consensus, but closer to the top of a consensus about that, then then I think when it comes to to future court cases, as there might be a sort of the judges will have to be informed about what is the current public opinion and public understanding of this, especially if it is the outcome of a process like this. If it is purely public opinion, like for example about, let's say, the death penalty, then it's not necessarily the same. It hasn't been part of a consultation or dialogue process where the different issues were directly debated. And so in that sense, it is it's a very interesting interaction that actually will have to take place between judicial interpretation and that of the public opinion.
Okay, because, I mean, the EFF, they naturally issued a statement and they're making the point, because and I'm quoting, they're saying, this is a war. Well, in fact, they're quoting the point made by Julius Malema, saying, this is a war between white supremacy and black consciousness. You must know the two will never meet. And racism is violence, and violence can only be ended by violence. And they said that because he spoke about killing, and he said that the courts, in terms of the Equality Court, talked about this as a literal instruction to kill white people, and they argued that it should not be the case, as was the example of and I mean, they're not mentioning kill the Boer or kill the farmer, but going back to other historical issues. I mean, do they have a point that the ruling had to bring in political, historical, and ideological context into its ruling?
Well, I think this latter case is more difficult in order to justify that. The first one we know was a liberation song that was sung especially by members of Umkhonto Busiswe. So there is clearly an historical context for that. Where we are now in the 2020s, that historical context is obviously very different, and the EFF will find it very difficult in order to say that the period, let's say in the 1980s and from before 1990, that is in a sense completely still absolutely relevant for this what they have said here, on the situation that happened at the school. So I think that in that sense, what as the way in which the Equality Court interpreted, and it is more of a literal interpretation, I think it does not incorporate so much of a historical context in that. That was almost the only conclusion that the judge could reach. It will become exceptionally difficult to say, well, history should be interpreted in one particular way, and that interpretation cannot over time change, given the dynamics, the interaction, the national integration that is taking place, the way in which the past, the history and the past is dealt with. Because if it is presented as stuck in a very particular sort of time warp, then we have serious troubles.
Now, the EFF have effectively committed to challenging the ruling to the Supreme Court of Appeal. I mean, no surprise there, right?
Yes, no, that's so. And I think it's very much informed by what we spoke earlier on about the Constitutional Court judgment.
Just lastly then, what are the implications? Let's just say, they challenge it to the Supreme Court, they take it up to the Supreme Court of Appeal, or they don't take it up. What are the implications in terms of the standing in the public spaces of Julius Malema right now on the basis of what has been found against him?
Well, I think there's going to be sort of two positions. Those are very much firmly within the foundations of the EFF, and maybe even parties left of the EFF who will say, well, what he was saying is based on our understanding of South Africa's society and what is the responsibility of persons who's involved in, as he put it, the black consciousness domain. And then I would say the rest of society who will say, well, we have to come to a point where, the South Africa of the future must be able to deal with history, but cannot keep history alive in a sense of making it the basis of a polarized situation.
Okay, but what is the legal status of the finding right now?
For the moment, until it's sort of changed by an appeal by an appeal judgment, this is then the law and the legal precedent that will have to be applied. So for the moment, as I said, until another court, a higher court, sets it aside, this is the way in which this part of the equality legislation has to be implemented and understood.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Professor Dirk Coetzee, appreciate you sharing your insights with us here on the National Pulse. Professor Coetzee is a political analyst and professor in the Department of Political Sciences at UNISA. Right, what do you make of this position? It's something we touched on yesterday, but to confirm, the Equality Court finding or ruling that Julius Malema now is guilty of hate speech, right, and incitement to violence. It's a position the EFF has clearly not accepted, and they intend taking it up to the appeal court. But for now, what are the implications? And as you've heard in my conversation with Professor Coetzee, the context of what was said and then making the comparison between Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer is such an obvious thing as well. Do you see any similarities or differences? I'd like to get your thoughts. I'll take your calls, in fact, right away. So quick calls. Whoever calls in first will get on air. 086 000 2032.
Are you looking for the best savings on spectacles? At Specsavers, enjoy 1,500 Rand off when you get tested at South Africa's trusted and most established optical group. Get 1,500 Rand off all frames in store, or use your 1,500 Rand off on our leading lens enhancements, such as drive light lenses that reduce artificial glare whilst driving. Book online or call your nearest store today. Affordable eye care, Specsavers. T's and C's apply.
The Kwena Metsi have one game plan, a win in their own backyard. However, Usuthu have a different mission. They are not traveling to Limpopo on holiday. They are hunting for 3 points. This is the Betway Premiership. Catch Makesi FC versus Amazulu FC this Saturday, 30 August at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC1 and SABC Plus. Then on SABC radio stations at 3 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
What is Overtrail? Is it off the beaten path, over the edge of comfort, or the thrill of the road less taken? It's over every bridge, every obstacle, every trail, and over to that view that takes your breath away. Overtrail means going further, exploring deeper, surrounded by the comfort and sophistication of a luxury SUV. It's this spirit that inspired the Overtrail project. Experience Overtrail in the LX and GX range. Lexus. Experience amazing.
September 5 is Casual Day. Time to get your Casual Day sticker and gear in support of persons with disabilities. Looking beyond the label, your contribution makes a tangible impact. Visit www.ncpd.org.za. Many thanks from the National Council of and for Persons with Disabilities.
This is an SABC supported initiative.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, let's hear what you have to say, and you can certainly comment on the conversation regarding Julius Malema and the Equality Court that I had with Professor Coetzee, as well as the DA representative yesterday. The EFF, I have to tell you, we tried to reach out to them to get comment. Not available now. That may well change.
Hi, Ashraf. My name is Mabena. Me, I'm lobbying for Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi for the presidency. I want Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi to be our next president so that there will be order in this country. We've gone too far living in a lawless country. Now that Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi is here, thanks God you gave us Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. This country is going to be a good country to stay in. Thank you.
But here's a question. When you lobby, who do you lobby on behalf of? Because at this point in time, there's no way one can become the president of the country, really, by standing as an independent. You have to be linked to a political party. I know there was a change in the rulings, but I'm talking about the realities of the time. So which party would he be linked to? I'm going back to, often we get people calling in and saying, Imtiaz Sooliman for president. I'm talking about the founder of Gift to the Givers. But unless he's linked to a political party, There's just no chance, isn't it?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. This is Toya Sapagu in Mpumalanga. Regarding this issue of EFF appealing the judgment, we may say it's EFF, but the reality is it is not EFF. It's Julius Malema. It's Julius Malema. He's just using the name EFF, but we know for sure that it is Julius Malema and not EFF. And we know that the EFF belongs to Julius Malema. Julius Malema does not belong to EFF, but EFF belongs to Julius Malema. It is his party. He's calling the shots. So anyway, that's my view.
Well, I mean, everybody knows who's calling the shots. I don't think there's any surprise in that. The question is, in terms of the ruling, it's against him, not the party, and the party has issued a statement, which I would expect them to do, right? Here's another call or comment on the EFF. Hi, Anonymous.
Hi, good afternoon, Ashraf. How are you?
I'm very good indeed. Okay, what's your point?
My point regarding this matter of Julius and the judgment against him is that South Africans need to be very careful as to ways our judiciary around this issue of race relations, man. Historically, indigenous Africans and other marginalized groups in our country have been marginalized for a long time, and it doesn't look like your racist white settlers are prepared to can move an inch to can accommodate the feelings and the history of the injustice that they have perpetuated till current. Now, I'm referring back to the constitutional judgment. My question that I wanted to pose to the professor is, what is the difference between the judgment coming out of the Constitution and the judgment lately coming out of the Western Cape? Well, I mean, okay, obviously the prof is gone. Thanks for that, Anonymous. I mean, essentially, if you heard the conversation with Professor Kotze, and please listen to it via podcast because it should be up in the next 10 minutes or so, is that he said that the one would clearly represent a historical context, and the other would be directed towards people because you can physically see them. There's a one-on-one where you say kill the people. It's those people there. Now, you know, those that have supported the kill the Boer, kill the farmer position have always argued that if it was ever literal, then how come the numbers of people being killed have been so low? That means it was never ever literal. But then some may argue, even in terms of this ruling, if it was literal, people would have been killed, and they're not killed as well. Although Prof. Kotze suggests that that ruling may well hold now because they may see it as really where you can identify individuals when it says kill someone. But I mean, as always, it is open to interpretation, isn't it? Thanks for that, Anonymous. Here's another on the comments we've just had from Professor Kotze.
Ashraf, you know, your guest is very, very biased when it comes to this matter. Because if you're looking at the context, you've made a very valid point where when you're saying that black consciousness and white supremacies will never meet, will always have to fight, And when Julius Malema was making whatever statement that he made, it was precisely on that context. So your guest, what he was supposed to be doing, it was supposed to be in a way trying to criticize what that school was doing, and then as well in the same way when he's criticizing Malema. So if he wants to continue in preaching the gospel of forgetting about the past, because everything that we are facing in this country, it is because of something that's inherited from the past.
No, I mean,
so your guest is very biased.
But to be fair, he was not asked to comment on what the school did. He was asked to comment on the ruling. That's really what he was asked to comment on. That's what he did, right? Thanks, I get that. Magdalene in Bloemfontein, hello.
Hello, Ashraf. I'm going to challenge something now.
Yeah.
From the first caller, then you said, no, Nkandla Mkhwanazi is supposed to be in a certain political party to be affiliated to.
Yeah.
Yes, we are going to start that particular party. We, the South Africans, we are enough with what we experienced from the agency for the past 31 years, having trust and hope in agency. So we learned that we need to start things by ourselves. So we are going to do that. And Dr. Mkhwanazi, like I said previously, he's going to be our Ibrahim Rasool. He's going to be our Ibrahim Rasool, and we're going to support him as a civic movement. We are going to do it.
Okay, but when are you going to do it?
We are starting now. Don't worry. Just wait and see.
I like that
Just
word.
wait and
Don't
see.
worry. Everyone's like, don't worry.
Don't
I'm worried. But okay, you said don't worry, so that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay, Magdalene, don't worry. 3:30. Here's the news headlines.
Thank you, Ashraf. On the news headlines, the South African Social Security Agency is gearing up for a major rollout next Monday, with around 80% of offices expected to implement a new beneficiary biometric enrollment system. 15 taxi drivers and owners have been taken in for questioning following a police operation after one e-hailing service driver was assaulted and another was shot at in KwaDabeka near Pinetown in KwaZulu-Natal. And 7 migrants deported from the U.S. to Rwanda have become the first group to arrive in the East African country under a new deal. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 northbound in Bedfordview has a crash near Van Buren Road. On Hendrik Potgieter Road in Reimsig, a crash near Furrow Road, so you're asked to expect delays. And on the N3 southbound in Edenvale, a crash at Modderfontein Road. All lanes are open. In KZN, the N2 southbound, a stationary vehicle after Umgeni Road causing delays, and the N3 eastbound, a stationary truck before Key Ridge. In Cape Town, on Klofnik Road, a truck crash reported at Bellevue Street. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Right, Chumino, let's not talk about Sundowns Chiefs. That was yesterday's story. Bafana is today's story.
Maybe let's start with that. A big congratulations on your predictions.
To me?
Yes.
I did say they'll end in a
You
draw.
did say a
and
draw.
I don't know why I never said goalless draw, but I promise you in my mind, when I said draw, I meant goalless draw because the expectations will be goals and I'm going to tell myself there'll be no goals. Yeah.
Well, there were no goals indeed. A very good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and our listeners. Starting off with football, Bafana coach Hugo Bruce has made a number of changes in his final 23-man squad for the upcoming 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers against Lesotho and Nigeria in Bloemfontein in September. There's notable changes, especially in defense, with Kuliso Madao missing out on selection and Orlando Pirates and Mbegezeli Mbogazi, who is set to make his senior national debut, selected. Ime Okan, who has a dual citizenship of South Africa and Nigeria, is also a debutant in the side, while Zuko Dunyelwa and Kulumani Ndamani coming in, giving in additional options at the back. Now, in terms of the goalkeeper and midfield department, it remains largely unchanged, with Kamagelo Sebelebele of Pirates earning his first call-up, and he's joining Kaizer Chiefs Mduduzi Shabalala. Mohaun Kota of Al Ettifaq adds further experience in attack, while Fawaz Bazadine and Jaden Adams have been left out of the squad. South Africa hosts Lesotho on the 5th of September at the Free State Stadium before welcoming continental giants Nigeria to that very same venue 4 days later in what could prove to be decisive for the qualifying campaign. In the meantime, TS Galaxy chairman Tim Sugazi insists that Sebele's chances of breaking into the Bafana squad would have been slim had he stayed at Galaxy.
But there's a way to it. So, and that way is either these players at some point or another maturing them out of our club. So that they can play for older clubs, bigger clubs, big clubs, internationally and so forth, which will then make them probably recognizable, or their efforts at least recognizable for the national team. Example, I've pulled Mike Sebelebele. If you know and you've been watching TS Galaxy, the same performance is dishing out for Pirates. He has been doing so with TS Galaxy, but we knew that he can continue doing so for the next 5 years at TS Galaxy because his contract was extended until 2030. But then he may not get the necessary recognition or get the call-up into the main national team. Why? Because he's playing for us. So the national selectors, they don't apply the same levels of judgment and decision when a player probably plays for a smaller club as they do when they play for a bigger club. I can rest assure you that if Sibelebele, as he will continue the way he's doing now for Club Orlando Pirates, he will be a regular feature in the national team. This is not new to me. He has been doing the same for the past 2 seasons.
Then in athletics, Eliud Kipchoge says that the desire to inspire others drove him to enter this week's Sydney Marathon, with the Kenyan legend admitting that there was huge pressure on him to win. The 40-year-old, arguably the greatest men's marathon runner of all time, headlines the field on Sunday in a race being run for the first time as one of the elite world marathon majors, and it puts it on par with London, New York, Tokyo, Berlin, Chicago, and Boston. And the two-time Olympic champion is very eager to be involved. Finally, in tennis, former champion Daniil Medvedev was fined a total of $42,500 by the U.S. Open for his spectacular meltdown during a loss to Benjamin Bonzi at the start of the week. Medvedev lost 6-3, 7-5, 6-7, love 6 and 6-4 on Sunday, but it was his behavior in the third set that dominated the headlines when the 2021 champion launched a fight against the umpire and whipped his jeering fans who stopped his opponent from serving. I'll have more on other sports in the next
Before I let you go very quickly, I did make the point just when we started the show that I questioned why the game last night was played on a weeknight, and sometimes that can be because of sponsorship obligations, like on the weekend if there was an MT8, but there's no MT8 now. I mean, there's only the finals, right? So this weekend is league games, right? So you'd wonder why, because I think after the Ellis Park disaster, it was like whatever the rulings are, that a Chiefs Pirates derby had to be played on the weekends for reasons that are obvious. But in the last 10 years, Sundowns have emerged to be as big a crowd pullers in a different way. So here it was 60,000 and 75,000 crowd. I mean, I think there was no problem, but the game was started 15 minutes late, and they even said, the match commission said, well, the game's late because people are coming late from work, and like, is there a reason why it was played on a weeknight?
It's part of the schedule. I think it's part of that PSL schedule that they have. However, it's notable that there should be a category in terms of how high a match is, because I can only assume how late some of the fans got home after yesterday's game, because 75,000, that's a whole stadium packed.
And FNB Stadium, you can't get out quickly.
Honestly, so perhaps those kind of games should rather be scheduled for.
Well, the big question is, why is this not a Category A game? If I'm just giving my own alphabets, but why would it not be a top level?
I mean, I was talking to Keys earlier on, just asking him why he thinks, according to him, that now it seems like fans are starting to go back to watch their clubs at stadiums, and he's just saying, listen, clubs just need to win. The fans are going to go back to the stadium.
Exactly. That's why I saw so many guys with Chiefs tops yesterday at the garage, as I mentioned. But that's fabulous, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. You see, the bottom line, the PSL needs a very strong Kaizer Chiefs. English football needs a strong Manchester United, but that's another conversation for another hour, right? More sport later on.
The green and gold of Mzansi Africa and the green and white of Nigeria have a massive rivalry in search of victory. Bafana Bafana tackles the Super Eagles. The South clashes with the West. This is the FIFA World Cup African qualifier. South Africa versus Nigeria on Tuesday, 9 September at 5:30 p.m. Live on SABC Plus and SABC2. Also available on SABC radio stations at 6 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Dis-Chem's Beauty Fair is here. Enjoy unbeatable savings on skincare that loves your skin as much as you do. Glow, hydrate and radiate. From expert-approved dermacosmetics to everyday essentials, we have the perfect match for your skin and your budget. Our skincare specialists are on hand, ready to help you find the best for your skin. Don't miss Dis-Chem's Beauty Fair. Now on. Stock up on skincare, cosmetics and fragrances at prices you will love. Offers valid until 14 September.
SAFM celebrates its 89th birthday this month by giving listeners an exclusive opportunity to attend the prestigious Joy of Jazz taking place at the Sandton Convention Center from the 26th to the 28th of September 2025. To stand a chance to win these sought-after tickets, simply SMS SAFM 89 followed by your name to 41391 and stay tuned to SAFM as we could be calling you. SAFM is the official media partner for the Dipala stage at the Standard Bank Joy of Jazz. Entries open from the 7th of August and close on the 31st of August 2025. Winners will be randomly selected and called from the 1st of September 2025. SMSs are charged at R1.50 per SMS. Free SMSs and SMS bundles do not apply. T's and C's apply. X at SAFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Okay, by the way, every Thursday we have this countdown to G20, and as a result of that, we'll have that collaboration that we do with Channel Africa. Looking forward to that conversation coming up later on. But for now, we spoke about this the other day, about this potential, coming together, not just of the DRC issues, but certainly of Ukraine, Russia, right? And the chances of an actual ceasefire. Well, I wonder how these countries are feeling right now, because overnight there's been Russian air attacks on Kyiv, and I understand at least 18 people have died, much more injured, of course. Buildings were targeted, amongst them in the British Council as well as the EU building, so I understand. So what are the implications thereof, of this already very, very fragile relationship between the Russians and the Ukrainians, the USA, and then the European Union? Professor Chris Isike is with me, who's the Professor of African Politics and International Relations at the University of Pretoria. Prof. Isike, as always, you're now connected to the National Pulse.
Thank you, Ashraf, for having me.
Thank you. So, do I take it we're one step further away from a ceasefire in that region after the attacks of yesterday?
Oh yes, we are. That's a very good way to put it. The bombing actually represents more than just a military escalation. I think it's a calculated political strategy that is just going to end up deepening the divide between diplomacy and reality. By targeting civilians particularly, and then of course those diplomatic symbols that the EU and UK diplomatic buildings represent, that actually it just delegitimizes the whole peace process, and raises the threshold for any kind of meaningful negotiation, because we've heard Zelensky say several times that he doesn't trust Putin, because of the kind of experiences they've had in the past, and that's why now I know he's sending his envoy to the US on Friday, and the uppermost on their mind would be those security guarantees to prevent them from, breakage in case they're able to reach any kind of compromise. But we are one step away from it, as you said.
What is your understanding of what actually happened yesterday, and what was the motivation? I can understand there's motivation every single day, but this time round, what would have motivated the Russians to attack, certain structures and buildings in the Ukraine?
Well, it's difficult to say. They've always bombed, civilian targets, people. I'm sure, like Israel, they could come out to say that they didn't, target those diplomatic missions. But it's just like what Russia did on the very day that Zelensky was in the White House with other EU European presidents. He bombed Kyiv. I think it's just to send a strong message that is in a strong position, and trying to get as much as he can. But at the end of the day, it doesn't show any kind of commitment to peace, and unless we have the US, asserting much more than it's doing, the prospect for a breakthrough is deeply compromised.
What do you think, therefore, needs to happen next?
Well, I think the U.S. needs to step up. They need to be able to, in the list, provide some protection for Ukraine to curtail this area bombardments, because that's where Putin is really winning against Ukraine. Otherwise, on the field, Ukraine can do enough, to hold their own and protect themselves. And there needs to be a real serious pressure on Russia, because right now there is no incentive for him to stop, and he's been given almost a blank check by Trump when he agreed that there should be no need for a ceasefire before a peace agreement is reached. In other words, they can keep bombing while pushing the peace talk as long as he wants.
Well, that was an interesting point, and I know we spoke about it last week, to say, forget the ceasefire, just get straight into actual peace, right? Do you think that that's a move that may now be backfiring?
Of course, absolutely. Because if you cannot be talking peace when you are busy bombing someone, especially when the other person is not responding in like manner, right? So you hold the upper hand, and especially now that the peace is going to be hinged in some ways on loss of territory for Ukraine. There is incentive for Russia to make as much inroads as it can into those areas in the Donbass that it wants. So it doesn't make sense to talk about a peace deal while bombing is happening. It just makes sense to at least have a ceasefire, no matter how short, and that can actually hasten the peace process, bring everyone on the table to make things work.
Just one last thought. I mean, South Africa has been awfully quiet recently regarding the pronouncements of what may be happening in the Ukraine and Russia versus maybe the role they tried to play, say, a year ago.
Well, maybe too much talk about that also added to its problems with the US, right? So it has a lot on its own plate now, and it's focused on trying to resolve its own problems. But I think that President Ramaphosa was involved two-way, between the South Africa and the US, and South Africa and Russia during that peace talk we had 2 weeks ago. He spoke to Putin. He also spoke to President Trump about what the whole situation was going to be like. So South Africa is engaged, but at this point, there is not much that it can do except just talk. And so maybe it's better to watch this play out and focus on solving its own problems.
And I suppose that issue, there's been talks about it for a long, long time, as has been the issue of Israel and Gaza and Palestine. And you just wonder, when can we secure not just peace, but the just peace in those regions? Well, that's where we're going to leave it. Professor Chris Isike, I appreciate, as always, your commenting here on the National Pulse.
Thank you, Ashraf.
Thank you. Well, there we are. You can comment on that. Russia, Ukraine, 18 people killed, much more injured in aerial attacks by the Russians against in Ukraine overnight, right? And amongst the buildings that were damaged, the European Union building and the British Council building as well. And part of that, 31 missiles dropped, 598 drones. So in total, 629 air attacks. What would be the end goal of that? You may give me your thoughts about that too. Well, what then is the end goal? And I haven't forgotten, you may want to comment on the conversation we had earlier on regarding the Julius Malema hate speech ruling and the take of Professor Dirk Coetzee, but not just that, anything else that you want to get off your chest. Let's hear it. I certainly want to know what's your point. Well, you'll have a point on the electricity tariffs. It's going to go up to over 8%. Yeah, man, that is no good. And we'll talk about that too. But coming up next, we have another interesting position here that you may want to pay careful attention to. We'll talk about that next.
SAFM brings you the Women's Circle on Friday, the 29th of August, live at Sandton Hotel, celebrating the business of arts and women in South Africa. Tune in to The Full Circle with Bridget Masenga from 1 to 3 p.m. as we unpack a generational conversation with a captivating panel this Women's Month. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Ashraf Garda is streaming live now on Facebook, YouTube, and X at SAFM Radio. You're listening to the National Pulse.
So we'll connect hopefully to the mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay shortly, because they've instituted or put together a debt relief campaign, which I think will be very, very welcome relief to all who live in that region. But right now, I need to hear you. You're on the Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Regarding Malema, the previous one of killed the poor, killed the farmer. Yes, it's a struggle song which was not produced or formed by Malema. He was just singing. See, it was a struggle song, yes. This one, which he was found guilty of, is from his heart. He did plan to talk like that. He did plan to talk like that. That's why he was found guilty. But he was found guilty for the right reasons. I think Peter Kruger's.
Okay, interesting one. From his heart, says Peter. So, because it's from his heart, as opposed to the kill the boar, which is really not intentional. But was it intentional that he wanted someone killed from his heart? Here's another.
Yeah, good afternoon, Ashraf. I think it's time PSL takes action against Kaizer Chiefs. This team no longer deserves to play in the PSL. No. At least take us to North Africa. We can play the likes of Wydad, the likes of Egypt, Al Ahly. Hi, this season, we are taking this league, man. Take us to North Africa already. Kosi.
Okay, this is what we were talking about even on air and off air with myself and Tumi, to say a little bit of a run for Kaizer Chiefs, and it's incredible the enthusiasm that is garnered by supporters around the country, and really I can feel it. Luvo in Gqeberha, hello. Luvo, hi.
I like the program and I listen to it every day because it's a time where I'm driving off from work, driving to home. That's enough.
Yeah.
I want to challenge you quickly.
Okay, yeah.
Number one, your show.
Yeah.
I think now your show can take this country further.
Yeah.
The show that you're doing currently, are you happy with the standard? Are you happy the way you're doing it? Are you happy where it is?
Okay, perhaps you can, listen, there's always ways we can improve as a team, right? Not me, because it's never just me. We're a complete team. Presenter is the captain and the producers are the coaches. So it's a complete team, right? But clearly you have a point, right? Tell me, what's your point?
Yes, my point is, I think it's high time to change, to raise the bar. Change your show to become a solution-driven program.
Yeah.
You know, we've been complaining every day. You're coming up with the analysts. But is it high time now, in this day and age, Ashraf, with your expertise, you have traveled the world, with your expertise, I think you can lead that solution-driven program. We come with solutions into our mess in South Africa. Solutions.
Okay. Well, you know what? You raise a very interesting point. So just give me, I don't expect a right answer or wrong answer, but give me an example how this would be a solution-driven show.
Like, for example, you come up with topics. Topic number one, maybe today you're saying we're discussing solutions for crime.
Yeah.
And then maybe the next day, solutions for corruption.
Yeah.
The next day, solutions for underperforming municipalities. There's a lot. Solutions for our electricity programs. You know, every day you come up, you lead the way, you come up with a topic. And also, what I like about you, Ashraf, I'll tell you what I like about you. For now, you are hiding the real Ashraf. Because you have traveled the world. You don't bring us the real Ashraf that we are expecting, that we know.
What's the real? Oh my goodness, I don't know what that means. Yeah.
You know exactly what I mean, Ashraf. You can lead this program, you can save this country, Ashraf, into this mess where we are in
Oh
right now.
my
with
God! Just
everything.
don't say Ashraf for president. I'll be in big trouble. Luvo, thanks. Listen, I take your point, and I think it's a conversation I want to certainly bring up with my production team. Okay, I take your point about besides reflecting on the issues, also being proactive and saying, what are the solutions? So when we discuss water problems, one thing is getting the councillors and getting the community leaders. The other is like, hey, how are we going to solve this problem and see? Because I'm in sync with you about that. You know, I often talk about saying we want to live in a champion nation. How are we going to get there? Luvo, thanks for that. Appreciate that call, right? JCK, you're in Musina. Go for it.
Hi, Ashraf. Are you well?
Yeah, very good indeed. What's your point?
Yeah, Ashraf, man, I would like you to do me a favor, please, before I get into my topic.
Yeah.
Ashraf, there is that advertisement which is done on TV, national TV, that talks about the food that we eat. You know, the food that we eat and mostly what we consume, be it soft or drinks or liquor, it's fake, man. It's fake. It's fake. Can the relevant department go and find out what is going on? In money, it doesn't taste good like before. What can So let me go to
I don't know which one it is, but look, listen, the name has changed. There used to be an organization called the Advertising Standards Authority. I think it's just changed slightly differently, meaning if there's an advert that's put out that is a fake advert, that means the claims are completely false, you can actually challenge it. And if there's a finding against it, they have to throw it out. Yeah.
No, I hear you, but I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is what we are consuming today, be it liquor, Castle or Black or what, even Coca-Cola, Sprite, whatever, they don't taste like before. That's why I'm telling you, today we are consuming what is fake. It's not that the food.
Okay, like too watered down, too much water in the drink.
It might be so, man. But the relevant department must go and look into that. That's why we don't live long. Okay. We die being young.
Hey, okay. JCK, thank you very much. Yeah. I wonder, are you finding it different if you're drinking, Fanta, Coke, Sprite, or a liquor before compared to then and now? And has that changed? I hardly drink mineral like cool drinks. I mean, I do, but I hardly ever do. Then alcohol I don't drink, so I don't know what the difference is. Okay, but Seppo in Joburg, go for it. Hello.
Hi, Ashraf. Then I don't have much to say. In fact, I have a whole lot of things to say about this country.
Yeah.
But it's almost like what's the point, But the point of my call is just to say to you, Ashraf, you are doing a good job. Keep up a good job that you're doing. And in so many ways, we didn't need a national
dialogue, national dialogue. Yeah.
Dialogue, yes. I mean, they just needed to listen to your show and maybe try to replicate it in other languages, by other radio stations.
Well, listen, I mean, look, you're very kind, Seppo, but again, I'll just emphasize, whatever you hear on the air is the product of a whole team, and it never is one person. But accept the fact, like a playmaker in the team, I'm the number 10, but there's a whole lot of players around us. We accept that, right? But the other part that's important, but the other part that's important, regarding the national dialogue, I mean, I hear that often from different people. It's, we already have a national dialogue. It's called the National Pulse, or not just this station, other stations too. But I also think we'd be naive to think that every person that matters in this country listens to this show or listens to this station. In fact, that would be just the wrong thing. That's what political parties do when they think they've got every person that listens to them, and it's not true.
Yeah.
Meaning, that is why we do need to get into townships. We need to get into town halls of the local, of the platteland, into the richest areas of the country and into the poorest communities to really understand them. And that person is not going to call in. As much as I'd love them to, they're not going to do so. We're going to have to tackle them on a one-on-one basis. So there's merit for having a dialogue with them anyway. Whether we want to call it a national dialogue or a local dialogue, I'll leave that up to you. Seppo, thanks for that. Appreciate your call. Interesting thoughts. But I like the idea that was said earlier on about being aspirational, even as a platform. Like, we must reflect the reality. So when there's a bombing, there's a bombing. But what are the solutions every single day? Like, what's the solution? Where is it? And maybe it's a question we ask too little of as a people. But Yachi in KZN, hello.
Hi, good day to you, Ashraf.
Yeah, good day to you. Thank you.
Ashraf, I just want to raise a topic that was discussed yesterday during Sakina's program.
Yeah.
It was about the change of number plates nationally.
Right.
And I think Johannesburg is still going through the motions around that. I just wanted to inform that here in KZN, the change of number plates has taken place. Now, the concern that I have is when listening yesterday, they were talking about a certain type of plate that was being considered for Johannesburg. Now, it doesn't make sense that if we're going out on a national roll, that we don't have a national direction to exactly what type of plate that suits the department in terms of the reasoning to change it so that it's the same throughout the provinces. Why should one province have an additional feature on the plate and another not have it if it's security reasons?
Yeah,
it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I hear that. Okay, we're
Definitely.
on to news time. I can't comment too much, but it does seem surprising to me. I think, yes, you'd want to have a provincial identity as, KZN versus, GP, for example. But at some stage, they must also be linked to the national. Why would it be that they're that different, almost like they've got nothing to do with each other? We're not a federal state.
Security issues.
Yeah, I hear that.
Issues.
I hear that,
Yeah.
absolutely. All right, thanks for bringing that up on the agenda. And maybe what's the solution? 4 o'clock, here's the news.
Thank you, Ashraf. On the top stories, SASSA to implement a new biometric system next week, and police question 15 people for e-hailing driver assault. For SAFM News, I am Ondelambana, and a very good afternoon. The South African Social Security Agency is gearing up for a major rollout next Monday, with around 80% of offices expected to implement a new beneficiary biometric enrollment system. It's designed to curb fraud and strengthen the integrity of the grant system. The initiative marks a significant step in modernizing social welfare services. However, concerns are mounting over whether the system will be ready in time for next week's rollout. SASSA's Grant Operation General Manager is Fani Setucha.
We are very much confident that a large body of our offices, they are going to be going big bang biometrics from next week. Training of the staff, we have our regional colleagues burning the midnight oil, trying to ensure that it is not training that hinders us to go live. We also want to reduce paper within the organization. So later in the year, we're going to start decommissioning a large body of manual forms. We want to encourage all our social grants recipients to attempt to try and get their biometrics enrolled. It is for their good. In case it happens that their identity is stolen, it is safer if we have verified you biometrically.
15 taxi drivers and owners have been taken in for questioning following a police operation after one e-hailing service driver was assaulted and another was shot at in KwaDabeka near Pinetown. A taxi owner who allegedly fired the shot presented himself at the police station, accompanied by his attorney today. KwaZulu-Natal Police spokesperson Robert Nchibunda says a number of firearms, including 3 AK-47s, were confiscated during the operation.
8 licensed firearms were seized from the house of one of taxi owners, and he will be charged for failure to safeguard firearms in accordance with the Firearms Control Act. 4 more firearms were also removed from their owners, and all 12 firearms will be taken for ballistic analysis. The situation is calm in KwaDabeka, and police will maintain necessary visibility to restore order, peace and stability. Police will endeavor to convene a meeting between taxi industry and e-hailing services to reach a consensus.
A 24-year-old man has been arrested in N2 Gateway near Delft in Cape Town for the illegal possession of a firearm and ammunition. Police spokesperson Joseph Swartboy says members of the anti-gang unit followed up on information about a firearm being stored at a house in the area. Swartboy says officers found an AK-47 rifle wrapped in a plastic hidden under a bed while they were conducting a search in the house. He says the suspect is due to appear in the Bellville Magistrate Court once he is charged. Talent agency MLA's Victorious Mulotsi says the late veteran actress Nandi Nyembe's artistry was remarkable and hard to miss. Mulotsi was speaking at the memorial service of the award-winning Nyembe, passed away last week at the age of 75 after a short illness. She captured audiences through the different roles that she portrayed for over 4 decades. Mulotsi says Nyembe was the heartbeat of South Africa's storytelling.
The industry feels emptier without her. Her voice, her laughter, her fire. She was, as many have rightly said, the very soul of South African storytelling. A teacher, a mentor, a mother figure, and a valued part of our MLA family. Mam Nandi's professional debut came in 1979, right here at the Market Theatre.
7 migrants deported from the U.S. to Rwanda have become the first group to arrive in the East African country under a new deal. A Rwandan government spokesperson, Yolanda Makolo, says only 4 will remain, with 3 opting to return to their home countries. Kigali has agreed to receive up to 250 migrants from America. Rights groups have warned that deportations could breach the international law if people are sent to countries where they risk torture or other abuses. Recapping the top story, the South African Social Security Agency is gearing up for a major rollout next Monday, with around 80% of offices expected to implement a new beneficiary biometric enrollment system. I'm on Delambana for SFM News Headlines at 4:30.
In sports, Netball South Africa up in arms over 360,000 rands legal invoice from World Netball and Bruce Hales Mbokazi. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound slow moving towards Crown Interchange and Sefako Mogato Drive westbound in Pretoria has a crash at the N1 highway. In KZN, the N3 eastbound queuing at Ashburton and the N2 northbound a stationary vehicle after Spaghetti Junction. In Cape Town, the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound slow moving towards Hospital Bend, the N1 outbound is slow moving towards Okavango Road, and Main Road outbound in Observatory slow moving towards the N2 highway. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
With the ever-changing financial landscape, it can be difficult to make sense of all the moves at times. Join me, Jimmy Moyaha, on the SAFM Market Update with MoneyWeb, Mondays to Thursdays, 6 to 7 p.m, as we break down the key market trends, top financial stories, and smart investment insights, all in one place. It's everything you need to stay financially informed and ahead of the curve.
Ashraf Garda on the National Pulse.
Right, we are going to have our weekly G20 countdown shortly. But to get us there, it's been day 2 of the Interpol African Regional Conference in Cape Town. Remember, we touched on it yesterday. So police and security leaders from across the continent are, formulating strategies to combat transnational organized crime. So really, that's the key. Organized crime, which cuts across all boundaries. If anything, when you talk about politicians saying drop the boundaries, it's the criminals, incredibly, who've been able to do that, including cyber crime too, right? So listen to this.
Is focusing on transnational and really just global financial crime. Now, in his address yesterday on day 1 of the conference, Acting Police Minister Professor Feroz Kachalia just really reiterated and also spoke about the numbers and how these crimes affect Africa as a whole. On the continent, as he mentioned yesterday, between 50 and 80 billion US dollars are being stripped from the country due to these financial crimes. Now, Interpol today will be presenting the tools and the measures that they've been using, or are using rather, to combat this crime. Now, we do understand at this point that they're still locked in that panel discussion, and hoping that we can get just someone to talk to us about those key points that were made in that closed session. Now, we also do know know that these financial crimes are a problem everywhere, globally rather. And now this is where they are trying to ensure that they locate where this money comes from, where it's going to and whom it's for, and also what it funds and what it's being used for. Now, we also heard earlier just really the impact of this conference in this particular province. We are in the Western Cape, in Cape Town in particular, and this is where we've seen a rise in gang and taxi-related violence. Now, this weekend alone, over 35 people have been arrested relating to those problems, as well as just over 7 murders this weekend alone, that is. And now this is a growing concern. We spoke to National Police Commissioner Fani Masemola earlier, who reiterated the fact that there are strategies in place that they had to re-look into to ensure that they tackle this problem. And they also mentioned, now this is the police commissioner for the Western Cape yesterday, who said that they see a pattern here. Once the taxi violence starts to decrease and they focus on it, they then see an increase in the gang violence, and vice versa. Now this is where he says this might be a pattern that could show that they are probably working together, but at this stage that is up for investigation. But yeah, we're still outside the conference venue, where we're expecting more delegates to come outside during that lunch break, and perhaps that's where we can just grab one specifically to talk about this financial crime key point that's being heard here today, Mfundo.
Okay, let's do this. I'm going to take some calls and WhatsApp comments for the next few minutes before we get to the G20 countdown. Bongi Nkosi in Cape Town, what's your point?
Good afternoon, Ashraf, and good afternoon to listeners.
Thank you.
I just find it really puzzling that there are people who are trying to defend this jamboree called National Dialogue. The challenges of this country are well documented, Ashraf. And any leader that claims to not know the challenges of this country, that leader, must just vacate his or her seat. This is nothing but a distraction from real challenges that we are facing. Commissions after commissions have shown us what are the challenges. And there are a number of other, platforms where challenges of this country have been ventilated. So I don't understand why we want to spend millions again, just embarking on a jamboree. We spent 20 million already on the 13th of August. On that chaos, and can you really say that 20 million was money well spent under the current conditions in South Africa?
Well, I hear you. Look, I think where you are right, and I do agree with you about this, I cannot believe that the political parties with their manifestos and everything in the last election, if they don't really know what the biggest issues are in our country and they don't listen to radio shows like this year, then they are completely out of touch with reality and they shouldn't actually be leading. So that I agree with you. Now, you do wonder, what is it that they hope to get out of it? Because it's still not very clear. And then that point is, once they get what they know already, what you and I know, the important part is, what are they going to do about it?
But then you ask the president that question, he also doesn't know what they're hoping to get.
Yeah.
It's such bizarre. In fact, I remember a time when people were up in arms saying Zuma must go. I think this is the time for South Africans to really, embark on the same march, because honestly, I don't understand why South Africans are allowing their taxpayers to be abused in this manner.
Okay.
This is nothing but an attempt by the ANC to try and revive itself in the disguise, of the national dialogue.
Got that. Bongi Nkosi, thank you for that. We're going to move on. Here's another about Chiefs, by the way.
Hi, Ashraf. I attended the game last night. It was very, very difficult to get to the stadium because obviously there is additional traffic from people coming from work. And getting out of the stadium, I ended up leaving around 12, just ensuring that I live safe. So for me, this is not an ideal for such games. It should be played during the day. It should never be done like this again. Now I went to work very, very tired, difficult, to work for the day. So I think this kind of games, I think, is a level 1 category game, should never be played. at night. Thank you. It's from
Thank you.
Khawelo at Bedford.
And you know what's the worst part? You left at midnight or whatever, and your team didn't even win. That I know for sure.
Ashraf and the SFM listener. Okay, I'm the fan of Kaizer Chiefs. I cannot comment more about Kaizer Chiefs, but I just want to tell the Pirates they must just stick into the original color of the GC. You know, black and white, not this pink. Sometimes it's greenish, bluish, and so on. Let's just stick to your own, like maybe original color. Actually,
and there's one quick one I'm going to take now.
Ashraf, you know, your guest is very, very biased when it comes to this matter.
No, actually, we've played that one before. Sorry, we're having problems.
Ashraf, you know, your guest is...
Okay, let's just get that out. We've had a problem with something's not deleting. My apology for that. All right, let me tell you what else is going to come up here. So there's been a story of electricity hikes of 8.8%. Yo, you are not going to like that. We're going to have to talk about it. And I don't know what the solution that is, because it does seem like we are completely... Don't you think we're like helpless when it comes up? We just have to like moan, groan, accept and pay, and go and try and pay and negotiate a fee at the council offices, whether you're middle class or struggling or very, very rich. They're not interested, are they? Let's now connect to the G20 countdown with our collaboration with Channel Africa.
This Women's Month, SAFM stands with the women shaping South Africa's future. Under the theme, Building Resilient Economies for All, we honor the pioneers, the problem solvers, and the everyday heroes driving change. Stay tuned as SAFM brings you powerful stories and meaningful conversations that move us. SAFM, celebrating women, celebrating progress. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Right, so here we are. We're just about to the end of Women's Month. It's amazing how August has gone by so quickly, right? But therefore, our G20 Countdown feature today focuses on women and women empowerment and looking at the issues that women need to ensure that they are at the very center of South Africa's economic future. The Women to Africa Summit, Tommy.
A really exciting gathering that's going to be taking place tomorrow. That is a gathering of policymakers, business leaders and entrepreneurs with one objective: to discuss strategies for advancing women's participation in Africa's economic growth. And this afternoon, we're going to be talking to Standard Bank. They, in collaboration with the G20 Empowerment of Women Working Group, are going to be hosting the summit.
Absolutely. Now, the G20 Empowerment of Women Working Group, and the acronym is EWWG, so Women to Africa Summit, aims to highlight the role of women in shaping sustainable development and strengthening Africa's position in the global economy. I would think, based upon our callers, they always say like, okay, how does it really work? So let's find out more about it. We're joined on the line by Lindeka Dzedze, the Head of Strategic Partnerships for Global Markets at the Standard Bank Group.
A very good afternoon to you, Lindeka. Good to have you with us. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Perhaps let's start off. I did somewhat explain what the objectives are, but, you know, there's no better place to hear it than straight from the horse's mouth. And you, for the intents of this conversation, happen to be that horse as the representative for Standard Bank. So perhaps let's start there. The main objectives of the Women to Africa Summit, which is hosted under the G20 Empowerment of Women Working Group. And while you're at it, how did Standard Bank, in the midst of all the other financial services providers, be the one to spearhead this along with the G20 group?
Thank you. I think for the most important thing for the day for us is we know there's been a lot of work around the G20 Empowerment of Women Working Group and other lobby groups. But one of the things that we wanted to do was to actually gather in one space, in one room, where we can have leading voices in the continent, really, in the diaspora, across sectors and public sector, and to actually have an action-driven dialogue on how the gaps are known. You know, what is the coordinated action that we need to take to close the gap? We are all looking forward to an action-driven dialogue on gender equality and financial inclusion. And I think the most important thing for us is that making sure that we have men as essential partners in the conversation, because these are the people that we need to shift institutional power and actually solution together. What is most important and why Standard Bank is involved? This is important to Standard Bank. Gender is inherent in everything that we do across the bank. And we actually together and partnered with governments across the continent and with Jura, the investment manager, to launch the African Women Impact Fund, which aims to build a sustainable platform to grow the number of women-owned and women-led fund management businesses that in turn actually tend to invest in other women. So this is something that we've done, and we have an exciting announcement that's going to take place on the day, but I don't want to give that away. So that is the whole point of tomorrow. It is, how do we translate declarations into actions? Because women are tired. We do not want any more shop talk. We want to make sure that we can come into a room to agree on what needs to happen and start building a framework that we can take out of that room and start building on, because G20 is going to leave, but we will be here. So this is the start of something that we're hoping that is going to be an industry-driven work around actually solutioning for where finance comes from, where funding and access to market is for women, that women have been screaming about for days now.
Well, that's so fascinating, Lindeka, because, I often talk about linking personal purpose to the national purpose. And the absence of that, for me, is always a void that we have in our country and perhaps in other countries around the continent and around the world. So it is in that context of making this link. Let's talk about this. What about the G20 Empowerment of Women Working Group, and how will that group and the Women to Africa Summit link women's empowerment to Africa's competitiveness in the global economy? Because as we have seen from the political shifts globally, nobody's going to dish out favors. You have to develop a way to be globally competitive.
So I always say this, financial inclusion is not a charity, it's actually a sustainable business. It actually allows you to grow new revenue pools that actually have a tangible impact in terms of our communities. So it grows our businesses, it grows our communities. The G20 Empowerment of Working Group is driven at a government level, but any declaration thereof that goes forward has to be translated into action. That cannot happen alone. The government has done enough work in terms of policies. There's been frameworks that have been done, yet the barriers still persist and the gaps are still there. So the collaboration to say, as private sector, how do we intentionally partner with government to actually translate the declarations into actions and make sure that we then come back and actually measure those, tangibly, purposely measure those, and be able to report back. So it's no longer just saying government is doing X, but how do we partner? G20 is going to go away. We will still be here. And this is more important for us as South Africa, but not only as South Africa, but as a potential to uplift the entire GDP of the continent. Because the numbers are there that says if you actually make sure that women participate in the economy, it has the potential to uplift the entire GDP of the continent. That cannot be led by government alone. It has to have private sector. We have to take ownership of that. So it's that movement now from shared, isolated efforts into shared accountability as a sector, across sectors, because it's not just finance, it's DFIs, it's private, it's corporates across the continent. That's what's exciting about us. So now we're going to do it ourselves, and then we bring in academia because we don't want to also mark our own homework. But I think there's more action, and I think there's a feeling in the air that everyone wants this to shift now. Hence, we're all doing it.
And I want to pick up on that, Lindeka. You've really made it a point to, as you say, that we've got to move from declarations to actions, that women are tired of talk shops, summit after summit, and yet none of that actually translates into anything tangible that will impact their lives. I'd like us to get into the nitty-gritty of what expectations you have. What are the commitments specifically, or the partnerships that are expected to emerge from this gathering? Because ultimately, I guess you want these commitments, you want these conversations, these agreements, these partnerships to influence the policy discussions within the G20 framework.
So there's been pre-work that has been happening. So we're not gathering tomorrow out of the blue. There's already been engagements with all the key stakeholders. We are working with professors at GIBS that are looking into a thought leadership piece that will actually summarize and take out the key thematics that will come out of the sessions tomorrow. We also know that we already also, as those who are participants in the ecosystem where the gaps are, hence we're talking about collaborative ecosystems. There's a huge focus in terms of what I do, Standard Bank, what ABSA does, what Investec does, what JP Morgan does, what AFDB does. But is there an opportunity for us to say, here's where the gaps are? Maybe there's a huge concentration in these areas where women are actually lacking in this. So there's already work that's being done, and AFDB is huge on the data that we're looking at. So there's already partnership in terms of we need localized data that speak to our own lived realities so that we know that we actually work on something that we know. So there's work that we're thinking we're plotting on from a thought leadership and data perspective, where there's already sort of commitments and people who said we're putting our hands up to do this work. And after that, when I walk out of there with a sort of a framework in terms of the key areas that we all want to get involved in, and then some sort of implementation modalities, even if it's not fully refined, because we're not going to stop tomorrow. The point is we're going to regroup post that, and we're looking at putting some dates on the ground, as in March next year. Do we come back with a framework that we can then work together? And one of the things that's important I want to actually note is that, remember, we're not reinventing the wheel here. There's been work that has been done by from the women that were in Nairobi 40 years ago, Beijing Declaration, Platform for Action. So we're building off all of that, and there are working groups within South Africa and across that are doing work, like with Kona and others. So it is now coming together to say, instead of working in silos, how to work together and also bring the institutions on board. So their plan is we have an action-driven day, come up with thematics and areas where we want to partner, have the thought leadership and that data, and walk out of there with the people that want to partner. I can tell you now, the other banks that I'm working with have already been messaging that we want to partner next year, want to drive this together. So there's already that shift, if I may call it, in terms of before you want to do things as yourself, as Standard Bank with ABSA, there's already that desire to actually partner in solutioning. So those are the key areas we're saying that there's a framework that we're going to walk out with, some data we want to put in the ground, some data that we want to do, and some thought leadership that will be driven by those in the academia. And then the government is also keen to partner going forward with the private sector to drive this and own it.
Now, let me end with this. I mean, we talk about the long-term impact of the Africa of the summit itself, right? So, what for you would be the long-term, lasting impact, and how would you measure it?
The funding gap, access to finance. If you speak to any, and I think it will be. That's the data, firstly, that we're looking for, right? Because there's a Wi-Fi code that's out there where we all want to make sure we're measuring the same things. So that Standard Bank is, you're publishing your own data and somebody else. That public declaration of the data is important. Measuring purposely, and all of us being able to say, this is how many women have been funded. So far, we all see the same number of women getting funding, and there's yet not much is moving in the Dow. I guess the actual numbers of women, because everyone talks about the date statistics, we want to be able to say we funded how many. Mm-hmm. So, for example, within the foundation that is part of AWIF Standard Bank, we have now funded 10 women where you can see their faces and you know their names and the data is published. That is going to be the one thing. The reporting is going to be crucial to actually put the numbers out, and you're going to see the faces. I think that's the commitment that the whole Wi-Fi code, that is the project of We20, is important. The declaration, because right now everybody published their own numbers. I don't think there's a set standard that we all adhere to. And I think once that is something that we take forward, that will actually be able to give us the numbers.
All right. I'm going to keep an eye on that access to funding matrix, Tommy.
No, certainly. What an exciting, development, because ultimately you have to be comparing on the same scale. That's the only way to be able to measure with integrity and really be able to see what progress is being made by the industry. Ms. Lindega Dzedze, Head of Strategic Partnership for Global Markets at Standard Bank Group, wishing you all the best for the Women to Africa conference, or summit rather, that's taking place tomorrow under the G20 flag. It's exactly 28 minutes after 4 p.m. Central.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Okay, there we are. Let's get to further comments from you. By the way, you may pick up on that conversation about access to funding and what that really means in reality, okay? Here's a quick comment we can take from Rustenburg in Tabeleng. Let's get your thoughts. Hi.
All right.
Intabeleng, you live. Go for it. Hello.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. How are you?
I am very good. And what is your point?
Great, thanks. What an eloquent speaker there by Melindi Wetsetse. She's well-rounded and she seemed to have her story covered. To me, the only thing I heard was that she was futuristic. I hear that yes, the gaps on what women funding currently is will be looked into. However, for how long still will that be? My advice would be they go down to the business offices of Standard Bank, where they are the face of Standard Bank is actually, to see how women are struggling to just even get an appointment. Moreover, when credentials are in place, no one even cares to look at them. Even if there's an email that they can send through, it just goes to no one and they never come back with a feedback. So I hear her, but I'm saying they really need to be pragmatic and really put things into practicality. Talking is nice. I really love her eloquence in how she really puts her things. But to me, as that woman down there, I am really not feeling that, but struggling every day. So,
yeah,
to me, it's for them to go and really make sure that they understand what is it that women are going through, and not with these seminars, but these seminars must be held in-house at the specific branch.
Okay, got that. Thank you very much.
Contribution.
Well, I mean, we're talking about, of course, Lindeka Dzedze, the head of strategic partnerships for global markets at the Standard Bank Group. Thanks for that call, Intabeleng. Well, I'll tell you what, talking is a lot better than not talking at all. But talking must be followed by action, and I think we agree. There's just too many things we've been speaking about for far too long. Well, talking about talking, let's talk about the news headlines. Here's Zondela.
Thank you, Ashraf. On the news headlines, taxi commuters in different parts of Ekurhuleni, such as Germiston and Katlehong on Gauteng's East Rand, are without transport following Santaco's halting of operations in the area. The South African Social Security Agency is gearing up for a major rollout next Monday, with around 80% of offices expected to implement a new beneficiary biometric enrollment system. And Human Rights Watch says Mauritania's security forces have been systematically abusing migrants from other African countries. A full update follows at the top of the hour with Greg Hoos.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 northbound in Midrand, slow moving towards Samrand Road. Winnie Mandela Drive northbound in Four Ways has a crash before Leslie Avenue, and Paul Kruger northbound in Pretoria is slow moving towards Rachel de Beer Street. In KZN, the N3 eastbound, a stationary vehicle at Ashburton and Felix Dlamini Road is where a crash is reported at Moses Kotani Road. In Cape Town, the N1 outbound queuing towards the M5 Kuburg interchange, the N2 outbound slow moving towards Bunga Avenue, and Viking Way eastbound in Epping slow moving towards the N7 Jakes Hadwell Drive. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Jimmy, you got a netball money story, I think. Yeah?
Yes, SABC Sport has established that World Netball has issued an invoice demanding Netball South Africa to pay for legal fees for the preliminary investigation conducted on suspended President Cecilia Molokwane. Now, Molokwane was suspended in April amid a disciplinary process opened against her by World Netball following anonymous allegations made to the world governing body. In correspondence seen by the public broadcaster, the invoice reflects the hearing was conducted on the 6th of August, with the outcome expected to be finalized by World Netball around December. Now, in football, Bafana coach Hugo Bruce has hailed Orlando Pirates defender Mbegezile Mbogazi, praising his mature, composed and tactically astute performance. Now, Mbogazi is one of the new faces in the current Bafana squad for the 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers against Lesotho and Nigeria in September. And Bruce says that Mbogazi's excellent decision-making, strong positional play has made him an attractive prospect for the national team.
This is a player, and I didn't see that so much. But from the beginning, he showed me a very mature attitude. He's confident. He's strong. He has a good technique. He plays without fear. And this is special for a young player. And I was curious when he came with us in March to see him playing with the team, those friendly games. And I was assured that when I saw him playing, this was for me the proof that he's a very good player, a very good defender, and a very young one.
Meanwhile, newly promoted Orbit College's ambition this season is to stay up in the Betway Premiership, but at the same time, coach Poriso Magoye wants the top flight to be a stage to showcase the ability of his players. Orbit was promoted up after edging Cape Town City in the post-season promotion relegation playoffs, continuing a remarkable rise through the ranks for a side that is essentially a team from a tertiary educational institution. They went from third tier of South African football, which is regarded as the amateur ranks, to the top flight in a space of 3 seasons, and Magoya says that their ambition now is to stay in the Betway Premiership. Elsewhere, Italy's Serie A and Spain's La Liga have hit back at a European Union commissioner who branded their plans to stage domestic matches outside as a betrayal of the fans. Serie A is planning to stage a match between AC Milan and Como in Australia next February, while La Liga hopes to move Real's game against Barcelona to Miami in December. In a statement, Serie A said that it was astonished by EU Sports Commissioner Glenn McAuliffe's remarks, adding that he underestimated the complexity and strategic value of initiatives aimed at promoting Italian football on a global scale, while La Liga says that there were thousands of fans, including Europeans around the world, that deserve to see the teams play live. In rugby, Super Rugby will mark its 30th anniversary next year, with the first of 77 matches kicking off on the 13th of February. The Crusaders opened the season against the Highlanders. Each of the 11 teams in New Zealand and Australia's top club competition will play 14 matches across a 16-round regular season. The highest ranked losing team from the qualifying finals will now progress as 4th seed. Then in tennis, Cameron Norrie battled hard for 4 hours in court 5 to set up a third round US Open clash against Novak Djokovic. Norrie scrambled past Francisco Comesaña of Argentina 7-6, 6-3, 6-7 and 7-6, and now he is all set to face Djokovic tomorrow, and knowing that this could be his best chance against a fatigued 38-year-old despite a love-6 record. Before I leave, Ashraf, I think this one you'll find interesting. If you don't know, you already know, because you highlighted a statistic similar to this in terms of Amorim, who is a Man United coach. He's played 34 games so far, only winning 8, drawing 10 and losing 16.
So his win record is like, I believe it's 34%, somewhere there. That's below South Africa's 35% pass mark.
It's actually at 23.5%.
Well, yeah. Oh my God. Sure.
The SAFM University Debate Challenge is back. The University of KwaZulu-Natal will take on the University of Zululand in what promises to be a nail-biting debate. Join us for the 1-hour debate on This Week Today with Oliver Dixon from 6 to 7 p.m. on Friday, the 5th of September 2025. The SAFM University Debate Challenge is an independent, non-partisan progressive initiative seeking to develop confident communicators, critical thinkers, and empowered global citizens. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Gender-based violence is destroying lives and tearing communities apart. It happens in homes, in schools, at workplaces, and too often in silence. But it doesn't have to continue. If you see it, speak out. If you are hurting, reach out. Because doing nothing is not an option. Listen to all 19 SABC radio stations from Wednesday, the 23rd of July for hard talk, discussions, advice, dramas, educational shows, and interviews around GBV with experts, survivors, lawmakers, and a whole country affected by gender-based violence. all on your favorite SABC radio station. Call 0800 428 428 to report abuse or get help. GBV, it ends with you. This message is brought to you by the SABC.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Yeah, stay with the data with Makwe Masilela from Makwe Fund Managers. You've got news about how many gold mines and their annual results, Makwe.
Yes, Ashraf, and that is for the year. And the gold production was down 5%, but the average gold price received up 27%, and the revenue up 20%, free cash flow up 54%. Ashraf, that was driven by higher recovered grades and a higher gold price, and the group all-in sustaining cost up 17%. If you less the price that they received for gold and their cost, the guys are making a clean 475,000 per kilogram. Hence, their profit as headline earnings per share is up 26%, and their dividend per share up 65%, but markets are not impressed because the share price is down 8%, and the much-awaited earnings report from the tech darling Nvidia that makes up a significant chunk of the stock market looked less than stellar yesterday, and the TPIT revenue forecast is already fueling concerns that the massive run-up in AI spending, the one that has yet to actually pay off, is slowing, and focus now turned to the revised Q2 US GDP, and from 3% it was revised up to 3.3%, better than expected. And also personal consumption expenditure data tomorrow, which is the Fed's preferred inflation gauge, and that is for more clues when it comes to interest rates. And the market has been complacent in the number of Fed cuts it is pricing, and should the job market show more resilience than expected, investors might have to revise their rate cuts expectations down. And locally, our July producer price inflation accelerated to 1.5%. That is the highest rate in nearly a year, and that is from 0.6 in June, and driven by increases in petroleum products. And after rising in the previous session, oil prices are now pressured by expectations of lower U.S. fuel demand, and that is at the end of their summer travel season, and also by the restart of Russian supply to Hungary and Slovakia. Brent crude is down 0.1% at $67 a barrel. Yellow metal holding firm near a more than 2-week peak as the dollar fell slightly and investors hunkered down for tomorrow's U.S. inflation data that is for close for interest rate path. And we see gold is up 0.4% at 3,410, platinum up 0.7% at 1,349. Global markets are on a holding pattern with the JSE down 0.1% and being tracked by the resources. The rand is flat against the dollar 17.67, 23.87 against the pound, and 20.63 against the euro.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Makwe. More market update coming up from Jimmy Moyaha, 6 to 7. Listen out to that.
You're listening to the National Pulse.
Well, we try and make every effort besides us speaking to other guests to bring you into the game. That means by listening to what you have to say. Irvin in Kimberley, what's your point?
Hi, good afternoon, Ashraf.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Thanks. Go for it. What's your point?
I just want to say, I think it's Ashraf for president, yes.
No, man. No, not at all. Next. Let me just delete. Can I drop the call?
Okay, Ashraf, there was a caller earlier that spoke about the food that we consume and the taste of it.
Yeah.
Something along that line.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add a quick one. I happened to be in the States in Los Angeles a few weeks ago, and the milk I taste there was different from the milk we taste here. So I'm not sure what the cows consuming in the States different from us. And then in Istanbul, the coke that you consume in Istanbul and Israel also doesn't taste like ours.
So what do you deduce from that? I mean, what would you deduce?
I don't know. What factory are they using? How do they produce this thing? But there's certainly a distinct difference between taste.
But do you not think that they tweak it slightly? I mean, I know I can't compare the milk story, but I can tell you now, going to Malaysia, to Kuala Lumpur, right?
Yeah.
Of course, you see a Nando's there, and that's the first place you run. It's like, oh, Nando's, you're being nostalgic.
Yeah.
And I can tell you now, it's spiced differently because it must suit that Malaysian market. So there's a general acceptance it's the same thing, but then they adapt it to a local market. I think others do the same thing too.
Most probably. But I think the gentleman was also trying to say, what is in the package? Are we reading the labels? How's our food? are we consuming the right things? Sugar content, maybe salt content, and all of that. Yeah. So
yeah, that's not a question of taste. That's a question of whether we're eating what we said, what we were told we're eating. Irvin, thanks for that call. Irvin in Kimberley, talking about foods and not the Kimberley Hole, by the way, which is like historic in that part of the world, as we all know, right? We're going to talk about IP, by the way, intellectual property. How much do you know about that, and how do you link all of that to marketing and branding your business? I'm certainly looking forward to that after this.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
So first of all, here's some really good news. I certainly enjoy following the marketing space, having hosted a marketing show here on SFM for about 5-6 years, a while back, right? So branding is really important. We understand that the big event in the marketing space is the Nedbank IMC event, which happens sometime 18th of September, I think it is, right? Now, part of that is that the SABC itself have joined in as a serious collaborator in that event in terms of the broadcast offering that the SABC provides. So looking forward to that. That, of course, comes up down the line in a few weeks' time. But maybe as a build-up to that, right, I think the conversation we're going to have now with Craig Shapiro is really important. Craig, good to connect with you on the National Pulse.
Absolutely delighted to be here. Thank you so much for having me. What a wonderful opportunity.
Much appreciate your time. Now, it's interesting. When we talk about IP, I'm suggesting it's intellectual property. You can confirm that or not. But significantly, how much attention to, away from the legalese, how much attention do marketers and brand builders pay to that?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think we all have this awareness that IP is there peripherally in the background. Everyone acknowledges that it's important, but no one really knows much about it. It's very ethereal, and it's something that I'm quite passionate about, is trying to just educate and uplift people. And in particular in the creative space, if you're a marketer, you are creating IP every day, you are using IP every day. And as the world has moved to a more technology-based ecosystem, so social media, AI, it's supercharged the opportunity, and along with that, it's supercharged the risk. And so not understanding this field, and it's actually much simpler than people think, but not understanding it can have massive negative ramifications. And part of what I see a lot of day to day is where big corporates, not just small companies or startups or entrepreneurs, have fallen afoul because they just didn't know better. And I think there also comes a point when you become chief marketing officer of a company, a lot of people are too embarrassed to say, I don't know. There comes a point in your career where you feel like you should just know. And in fact, the truth is there's a lot of lawyers who don't know this stuff. And so I joke that my father still tells everyone I'm an IT lawyer because IT is it's often misunderstood. And so I'm quite passionate. I'm excited about the opportunity to be talking about it. But I do think that there is a massive amount or rather a massive gap in the knowledge that people have when it comes to IP.
Okay, so therefore, just there for a quick definition, so that we are not vague and ambiguous about it. When we say IP or intellectual property, what are we talking about?
Yeah, it's a key question. So it is a property that comes out of your mind, so that hence the term, but not everything that you think of is intellectual property. And so I like to start this question with, or this answer rather, with what is not IP. So there is no intellectual property protection for ideas. Now that's normally quite shocking to people, and I get approached probably once a week to say, I had this idea and someone stole it. No one can steal your ideas. And the whole point of intellectual property law is actually to encourage sharing so that there can be growth in art and industry. And that is how art and industry grows. We hear someone doing some innovative thing with a guitar, Jimi Hendrix coming up with a new way to play a guitar, and other people copy him and then develop their own style. And so what intellectual property is it's a set of laws that are designed to encourage people to create new works, whether that's creative, industry, whatever it may be, and that protection generally enjoys a limited lifespan, and the reward you get for sharing is that you get a limited period of exclusivity where you can monetize it, and then it falls into public domain. And that's a key word, public domain. People think if it's publicly available, it's public domain. But in legal terms, public domain has a very particular meaning that those intellectual property rights have ended. And so intellectual property are really rights that are given to authors or creators of original works that meet the standards of the particular acts.
Okay.
Now, generally, what's important to know is that if you create a work, the most common form of intellectual property is copyright, actually. Because if you meet the test, which is it needs to be original work, recorded in material form, and created in South Africa or by a South African citizen, copyright vests automatically. There's no registration even possible. And so even without realizing it, you can create intellectual property.
Okay.
And so we're actually doing this every day without knowing it. But there's another category of IP called registered IP, and that's trademarks, patents, and designs, and those you have to register.
Yeah, which is the ones I'm very familiar with. But, I would think that, for the purpose of this conversation, big businesses would know exactly, or they should know what they need to do. And if they can't, they've got somebody in the office so they can tap on their brains anyway, right? But for the people who are listening to us around the length and breadth of our country, they could either be in small businesses or they're entrepreneurs and they're wanting to be upwardly mobile. They could even own an Instagram account, for example. What advice would you give them?
So I think you've got to do your homework. If knowledge is power, then you need to empower yourself. There are very particular resources you can use. ChatGPT is not a great one because it searches publicly available databases, and the databases typically it's searching are US based, and our laws are different. But there's resources if you can't afford to consult with a lawyer, which I would obviously recommend. But I understand. I've started my own business. You sometimes don't have the resources to do it. So websites like CIPC have a lot of information available. So go to credible websites. A lot of the big law firms have a lot of information about what IP is. And I would then suggest finding a qualified IP lawyer to partner with you on this journey, because the foundation of every business is intellectual property. It's not just a marketing question. It's actually what your business is. Yeah, and so every day that you don't actively protect and control your IP, you could be losing it.
And how is something I want to ask you right after this.
Bafana will host Nigeria in a FIFA 2026 World Cup qualifier at the Toyota Stadium on Tuesday, 9 September at 6 p.m. Tickets are now available nationwide and online from 70 Rand for adults and 40 Rand for children at all Ticket Pro outlets, including Spar, Postnet, and all petrol stations. Get your tickets early to avoid disappointment. Come in Bafana supporter gear, ready to sing for a win. Gates will open at 3 p.m. If you are not in Bloemfontein, catch the game on SABC2. For more information, visit safa.net and at Bafana on all social media channels.
Spar brings you super savings. Get 175 gram Protex soap, any two for 24 Rand, and 50 megs free data on Spar Mobile, or 100 ml Colgate Maximum Cavity Protection toothpaste, or 150 ml Triple Action, any two for 42 Rand, and 100 megs free data on Spar Mobile. Thus, you could win your share of 6 million Rand in instant cash. Price is valid until 7 September 2025, while stocks last. T's and C's apply.
Zinzi, the Gen Z. Word on the street is you sold your car.
Yes, and I needed a glow up. Hashtag no hustle, no hassle.
So wait. The influencer got influenced by We Buy Cars.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And they came to me. They checked the car, they gave me an offer. Oh, and they paid me immediately. Easier than an Insta Live, without the weird DMs at 2 a.m.
I didn't understand half of the things you just said, but hey, We Buy Cars. Geared for the glow up, geared for you.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
Right, concluding our conversation on IP with Craig Shapiro. So you were talking about, Craig, about how much people stand to lose if they don't grasp it. What would that be?
Yeah, so I mean, practical examples. I'm dealing with one now where quite a large company had its logo created by a third party, and they paid for it, and they thought because I paid for it, I own it, and that's just not how copyright works. And so years later, they've discovered they don't own it, and now it's an incredibly difficult task to try and track down the designer of the logo. The same thing happens with packaging, and this happens to small companies and large companies. But what's important to know, if you outsource the development of any of your IP, and for marketers in particular, if you're having any creative materials created for you by third parties, if you don't take written assignment of the copyright, you don't own it. And there are significant risks that go with that. But it's counter logic, because you think if I pay for it, I must own it. And it's just not how it works. And I encounter this problem almost on a daily basis. It really is a very, very common issue. This misunderstanding, and once I've told you now, you'll never forget it. And this is what I'm saying.
We think so, and I hope that will be the case. Yeah. Listen, just the last thing before I let you go. Often it's been spoken about that the head of marketing of a big company never sits on the main board, as if they see it as an aside, right? So in this case here, it's ironic because it suggests that marketers are not marketing themselves well enough to be taken seriously. How do marketers then get a seat at the table, at the main board table of big companies?
I think it's very important. If you look at, for example, the value of the S&P 500 over the last 50 years, the value of intellectual property attributed to the companies within the S&P 500 has gone up to 90%. So now 90% of the value of those companies is IP. And marketers, not just marketers, but they play a significant role in creating the value of that IP. And so I think that, maybe it's how they measured. I agree, maybe it's a marketing issue, but they measured on return on investment. But that's not really a fair way to deal with it, because they are building intellectual property within the business. And so until they understand that, they can't then communicate that to anyone else. And that's really what I'm trying to convey.
All right, let's leave it at that. I understand you'll be talking at the IMC conference here in South Africa on the 18th of September. Looking forward to connecting with you then. Greg Shapiro, much appreciate your time here on the National Pulse. And really, if you don't sort out your IP, that'll get your pulses racing, I'm sure of that.
You're listening to the National Pulse.
Right, let's get to the Eastern Cape. Max, you've got a thought on solutions, yeah?
Hello.
Yeah, Max, you're live on the air. Go for it.
Yes, I wanted to contribute on the solutions that we can have in this country of ours.
Okay, go for it.
Man, I've been in this country for more than 70 years. The greatest problem in our country is our government. If we can vote our government out of power, then the solution number one is over. There's no crime, no unemployment. All those things are the things also of the latest thing. We don't know them in the olden days. Our greatest problem in this country, I'm telling you, Ashraf, for more than 70 years, is our government.
But isn't that? Let me flip it around. I mean, I understand there's so much lacking in basic service delivery for most people. So, as you said, if you want to be solution based, then the problem is not about voting out, but voting in. What type of leadership do you want to lead us?
In the leadership that we want is the honest leadership. So if we have the honest leadership, we won't have this unemployment, we won't have the lack of delivery. All those things are the things of the past. They came to these things from the exile. We don't know those things yet.
Okay.
And this country, Ashraf, I don't know, many people will not agree. This country has been built by the white governments. And those white government, it is what it is because of the white government. Now they want us to hate the white men.
No, but I don't know who's the they. Yeah, I mean, I'm not too sure. Listen, we can have a 1 hour chat about that. One can talk about, at the expense of what? About, can apartheid ever be considered a good thing? I mean, clearly not. Max, thanks for that. Maybe another 1 hour conversation on just that, the legacy of South Africa, right? Sydney in Bushbuck Ridge High.
Brother Asaf Sydney to the labor in Akono package.
Yeah, good to talk to you. Go for it.
Yes, yesterday, if you recall, one caller said the effectiveness of advocacy groups such as AfriForum.
Yeah.
He even said, what if blacks come out with their own advocacy group to counter AfriForum?
I remember that very clearly. Yeah.
Yes, in my opinion, as South Africans, we don't need race-based advocacy group or ethnic group-based advocacy group. If AfriForum represent Afrikaner, are we expecting the English South Africans to start their own advocacy group, the Zulu speaking to start their own, or the Zulu to start their own? We don't need that. All we need, in my opinion, let's have an advocacy group that represents all South Africans in our race demographic. That will be the advocacy group I can support. Members such as Kim Hela, if you know Kim Hela, Peter Kriel, the young Afrikaner. Angela Fick, be part of it. Silo Hatang, former leader, chairperson of Nelson Mandela Foundation. Pagamile Sobima Jola, I can put those. Then they become the advocacy group that represents we, the kind ordinary people of South Africa.
Okay.
And that's the way in which we can fund their advocacy group. They must even have the operational group to always stand. It must not politically based or politically party based.
All right.
Just represent ordinary people of South Africa.
Sydney, thanks for that. And Sydney's made his point. And you know what? You can make your point too. Let's get the news now. It's 5 o'clock. Here's Greg House.
Thank you, Ashraf, and good afternoon to you. In this news update, taxi commuters stranded in Ekurhuleni and SASSA gearing up for new system rollout. Good day to you. Taxi commuters in different parts of Ekurhuleni, such as Germiston and Katlehong, east of Johannesburg, are without transport following taxi body Santaco's halting of operations in the area. The Taxi Association says it's not happy with the impounding of its vehicles by officials. Santaco's Zweli Dlamini.
This difficult decision stems from the ongoing impoundment of vehicles, particularly the 10-seater baby buses, which are consistently being targeted for not having operating licenses. These licenses, however, are no longer being issued by the relevant authorities. What is particularly concerning is the selective enforcement of the law. While our operators face daily harassment and financial penalties, 7-seater vehicles, often operating through e-hailing platforms or informal transport services, continue to operate freely without the required permits.
Police in Limpopo say they've arrested a motorist who clocked 183 kilometres an hour. They say he's been granted 500 rand bail by the Bela Bela Magistrates Court in Limpopo. Transport Department spokesperson Titimalo Chweni.
This arrest serves as a stern warning to all motorists that reckless driving will not be tolerated. So we continue to urge all drivers to exercise caution, adhere to speed limits, and prioritize road safety.
The SA Social Security Agency is gearing up for a major rollout next week, with around 80% of its offices expected to implement a new beneficiary biometric enrolment system. It's designed to curb fraud and strengthen the integrity of the grant system. However, concerns are mounting over whether the system will be ready in time for next week's rollout. SASSA's Fanny Setocha.
We are very much confident that in a large body of our offices, they are going to be going big bang biometrics from next week. Training of the staff, we have our regional colleagues burning the midnight oil, trying to ensure that it is not training that hinders us to go live. We also want to reduce paper within the organization. So later in the year, we're going to start decommissioning a large body of manual forms. We want to encourage all our social grants recipients to attempt to try and get their biometrics enrolled. It is for their good. In case it happens that their identity is stolen, it is safer if we have verified you biometrically.
Police say a man has been arrested in the N2 Gateway project near Delft in Cape Town for the illegal possession of an AK-47 assault rifle and ammunition. Police say members of the anti-gang unit followed up on information about a firearm being stored at a house in the area. Officers found the rifle wrapped up in a plastic bag hidden under a bed. The suspect is due to appear in court once he's charged. Human Rights Watch says Mauritania's security forces have been abusing migrants from other African countries. The rights group alleges the violations have been exacerbated by a deal with the EU, which aims to curb dangerous sea crossings to the Canary Islands. It documents how migrants and asylum seekers, often trying to leave Mauritania, have been subjected to rape, torture and extortion at the hands of the military, border personnel and other security staff. Mauritania has rejected the findings, saying it has taken steps to protect migrant rights. The European Commission has said its deal is anchored in upholding rights. The top story: taxi commuters in different parts of Ekurhuleni, such as Germiston and Katlehong, east of Johannesburg, are without transport today, following Santaco's halting of operations in that area. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Gross.
In sports, the Sao Bafana squad named for September World Qualifiers. Froome suffers multiple injuries due to crash while training in southern France, and Hassan confirms decision to skip Worlds in favour of Sydney Marathon. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 southbound in Germiston, queuing towards Geldnys interchange, the N12 R24 westbound in Bedfordview, slow moving on both routes towards Giluli's interchange, and Allendale Road eastbound in Kloorkop has delays towards Mastiff Road. In KZN, the N3 westbound queuing towards Cliffdale on the M7 truck congestion in that Rosberg area, so expect delays, and the M7 westbound queuing at Bel Air Wakesley Road Junction. In Cape Town, the N7 Jakes Havel Drive southbound queuing towards the N2 highway. Imam Haroun Road is slow moving through Claremont, and Coburg Road southbound in Brookland has heavy traffic towards Coburg interchange. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
After a 1-0 loss against Arsenal in the opening match of the new season, the Red Devils are searching for a win at Old Trafford.
Mason Mount! Oh, what a finish from Mason Mount! Kills it home 2-1.
However, the Clarets are gunning for a crucial 3 points away from home.
Just from Brownlow! What all square! What a goal from Burnley!
This is the Premier League. Experience Manchester United versus Burnley FC on Saturday 30 August at 3:30 p.m. Live on SABC3 and SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game!
This year, the Standard Bank Joy of Jazz Festival presents 3 unforgettable days deep in the art and heart of jazz. From the 26th, 27th and 28th of September, Umu Sankare, Ababemu, Jasmia Horn, Silent Law and the Noisemakers, Najbonk Trio, Michelle Ndingio-Jello, Valencini, Gabby Mutuba, and over 50 world-class acts will be ready to welcome you and yours to 4 magnificent stages of the Sandton Convention Center. Take me there. Buy your tickets at Ticketmaster now.
Dikwena Jametsi have one game plan, a win in their own backyard. However, Usuthu have a different mission. They are not traveling to Limpopo on holiday. They are hunting for 3 points. This is the Betway Premiership. Catch Makesi FC versus Amazulu FC this Saturday, 30 August at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC1 and SABC Plus. Then on SABC radio stations at 3 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game!
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, still more to come, and they're big issues. One is NSFAS looking at, they've got 6 priority areas to fix up NSFAS and solve some of the problems that is being faced by them and by extension by students as well. So we'll talk about that just now. And then this one gets to you directly no matter who you are, right? Which is about increases in energy or electricity power tariffs. So electricity tariffs for the next 2 years have been hiked after the National Energy Regulator, that's NERSA, said, listen to this one, it found an error in its price determination announced in January. So my understanding, what did they do? Undercost it, and now they found the problem, and now they have to hike it. And the whole country then has to literally pay the price. With me is Tsepo Khadima, who's an energy analyst. Tsepo, appreciate you connecting with us on the National Pulse.
Ashraf, greetings to you. It's been a while. Good to talk to you again.
I know, very long. There's been no load shedding to debate, so I get that, right? Anyway, let's get on to another. I mean, linked to that, the electricity, or the executive manager for electricity at NERSA, that's Rulani Matibula, spoke to Sakina Kamwendo today on the lunchtime show about the Eskom settlement, between that error that was discovered and then renegotiated with Eskom, and the bottom line to all of that, I understand, is there's an 8.8% increase. Okay, the world's all fine. We have balance or equilibrium. Can't be. This is what he said.
For their transmission business as well as their distribution business. So Eskom was concerned with what we had provided, or what we had decided on as their allowable revenue for their generation business. And actually in their papers that they submitted before the court, it was indicating that they were indicating a shortfall of 107 billion. That they believed that it was due to them as Eskom. So that is where the 54 comes from, because as the regulator, when we then considered what Eskom had put before the courts, as you would know, that it is the allowed process according to the Act, that once a regulator has made a decision, that decision cannot be corrected or revised in any other manner except through the courts. So it is on that note that we followed the process, and Eskom made actually a proposal to actually reach a settlement of 62 billion. That was their proposal. And when we relooked at the numbers and the error that Eskom believed that we had made, what we believe was prudent was 54 billion. And that is how we ended up settling with Eskom for additional 54 billion for this 3-year, multi-year price determination.
Okay, I'll tell you what, I can sympathize if you're listening and you know, what do they say, scratching your cop, right? You're rather confused about all of this, and I could be sympathetic if you know a little bit about it, but you're still confused and you're rather angry. I mean, is there a reason to be angry? I'm trying to understand it, because most of us ultimately don't even care about who's saying what and who's settling what. We just want to know how much we're paying and can we reduce that cost, because it's already far too high. So, Tsepo, help us through this. I mean, just give it to us in layman's terms now. What has actually happened?
What happened is indicative of ineptitude of the highest order at both Eskom as well as NERSA, and also the complete disregard of the law. I would assert, as I did when I made mention, I think on SABC's Morning Live, that load shedding itself was unconstitutional, and I think the parties that then took the government to court and the president, the courts agreed with them, because I gave grounds upon which that was unconstitutional. In this instance, I assert again that it is actually that agreement itself is unlawful and stands to be set aside in the court of law on a number of grounds. One of them is that Eskom allegedly had demanded a 107 billion rand provision. Mm-hmm. They then came back and said that they could settle for 62 billion. That quantum, that gap is too wide. It therefore means that we are dealing here with people who are working on guesswork instead of actually being knowledgeable and confident of the numbers that they churn out. And for NERSA itself to say, well, instead of giving you 107, we'll give you 54 billion, and as though that we're supposed to be satisfied with that, I think the most appropriate response to this is to be outraged, and outraged to the extent that we should be demanding, correctly so, that at both Eskom as well as NERSA, heads must roll, because the cost to the economy and the cost to the dignity of ordinary people who now we find that energy poverty is exacerbated as a result of this high cost. Tariffs, which in any event are not justifiable. Ashraf, you'd remember that for a long time I have asserted, and I've yet to be challenged successfully by either NERSA or Eskom, that according to their own numbers, the tariffs today should have been at R1.22 a kilowatt hour, and not the R5 plus that ordinary people are already paying today as we speak. And this is just we have priced ourselves out of competitiveness scales, and our refusal to benchmark our electricity cost with at least three main economies, being that of Turkey, India, as well as China, means therefore that we can have no legitimate expectation whatsoever to see economic growth above 1%, and therefore unemployment is going to remain at the highest level it is remaining.
So what then is the win-win solution here? Meaning that how do we have a situation where Eskom can charge, because they do need to earn an income or revenue, let's put it that way, right, as determined, and then of course it filters down to the local municipalities as well, and then we pay. But how do we get to a situation where the amount that we pay monthly, or or even daily if it's prepaid, is not exorbitant at this point in time? It is unaffordable, I think, for the vast majority of the people of South Africa. So how then do we get to a win-win situation compared to what we have now, which is just a sense of utter helplessness?
Well, the long-standing or long-lasting solution to this problem is a standardized uniform tariff. And that uniform tariff should be benchmarked with those three economies I've mentioned, China, Turkey, and India. Mm-hmm. And that would bring us to the R1.22 a kilowatt hour figure that I am mentioning. And I challenge them to prove me wrong on that number, because it comes from their own figures and estimates from as early as 2012. And also, remember, we are dealing here with an entity, Eskom, that somehow misapplies the policy provision by NERSA dating back to 2008 of an animal called negotiated pricing agreements. Those so-called NPAs have resulted in unlawful and unconstitutional discrimination of customers in the extent that you have got big corporate companies, some of them are paying 65 cents a kilowatt hour, when an ordinary person is expected to pay in excess of R5 a kilowatt hour, and therefore, impeding on the dignity of ordinary people, at the same time exacerbating energy poverty. Whereas by its own admission, Eskom, the cost of producing a unit of electricity would actually have been 32 cents if they had not allowed being robbed by the big coal miners, and if Eskom had taken appropriate steps to ensure that they had control on the feedstock, particularly that of coal, because then it will cost 32 cents a kilowatt hour to produce electricity instead of the 54 cents that they reported was their cost of producing electricity a year ago. And even at 54 cents, they cannot justify why 54 cents cost of production will then result in a 10 times tariff that is much higher than that. So, and I think it's about time that as South Africans, we should not be too grateful for too little, to the extent that we have not called for the wholesale dismissal of those that are at NERSA, because I can tell you now, without fear of error, that here we are dealing with the gross levels of incompetence, but it's also at Eskom board, in that they continue to inflate costs, because the cost of producing electricity is more of an opinion more than that of science, because there are a whole lot of costs that have been added to both the production as well as the transmission and the distribution of electricity, which are not justifiable by any means whatsoever. And one of the things I was commenting, in fact, yesterday, that if the board of Eskom had been competent, they would have long told the equally inept and clueless comprador regime of the day to forgo the so-called just energy transition, because it is Looney Tunes, to the extent that all of those policies have effectively brought this situation where the tariffs are ever increasing to the extent that in Gauteng alone, there is in excess of 2.5 million people who are without electricity. It's unthinkable. And that you can have energy poverty to the extent that now I think about 2.7 megawatt hours per capita consumption. Therefore, the economy cannot grow. So it's devastating, not only on the individuals, but on the economy as a whole.
It certainly is. Let's just wrap up very quickly as we get to the very beginning, which was, the error, the so-called error that was brought up by NERSA, then in consultation with Eskom. So without looking at the money part of the error, because you've touched on it already, the principle, I mean, if that sort of error that is now uncovered was made in another department, in another institution, how would that have been received?
Well, in terms of the government, it would have been tolerated. If it was in the private sector, all of the persons responsible would not have been able to keep their jobs. So here we are, they continue to be sitting in their plum jobs, notwithstanding the damage that so-called error, which in any event is contrived. It is not a factual, is at the cost that they believe they need to recoup and recover from the customers. It is not the real cost, is not a factual cost of producing or generating transmitting it and then distributing it. And they know this as a matter of fact. But if anything, they don't even want to acknowledge that they are going to increase the incidence of customers' defaults, whereby the delinquencies, the debt is ever spiraling. Now they tell us that the municipal debt, so-called, is over 104 billion or thereabout. And if anything, it is going to continue to increase unabated. So bailouts from National Treasury are going to continue to be the order of the day. And whenever there are bailouts, remember that takes away from the much more needed either social infrastructure or social expenditure needs, whether it's healthcare or policing, or even economic infrastructure needs.
So bailout really is passing cards ultimately. Appreciate your time as always, Tsepo Khadima, who's an energy analyst, reflecting on the now confirmed energy increase of 8.8% tariff increase after an agreement between NERSA and Eskom. Having said earlier there was an error that in their calculations for January, so now it's gone up to 8.8%. Have you got the money?
Dikwena Jametsi have one game plan, a win in their own backyard. However, Usuthu have a different mission. They are not traveling to Limpopo on holiday. They are hunting for 3 points. This is the Betway Premiership. Catch Makesi FC versus Amazulu FC this Saturday, 30 August at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC 1 and SABC Plus. Then on SABC radio stations at 3 p.m. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
SAFM brings you the Women's Circle on Friday, the 29th of August, live at Sandton Hotel, celebrating the business of arts and women in South Africa. Tune in to the Full Circle with Bridget Masenga from 1 to 3 p.m. as we unpack a generational conversation with a captivating panel this Women's Month. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Okay, so from one big issue, here's another. Yesterday, the NSFAS, the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, held a media briefing on governance and operational challenges faced by the organization. Now, interestingly, the organization is owed, listen to this one, 45 billion rands in outstanding student loans. So I say that because even in the earlier conversation we just had, it's about delinquent, debt and what do you do around that. So here you are, 45 billion rand outstanding student loans that NSFAS is owed. And NSFAS chairperson Karen Stander also revealed that a critical trust deficit exists between NSFAS, the higher education institutions, student bodies and students. So basically every one of them, right? And all of them contributing to organizational turbulence. So what does all that mean? And what's the plan for NSFAS going forward? I believe they do have a 6-point plan, which is one higher than the normal 5-point plan. Ismail Manisi, the NSFAS spokesperson, appreciate your time. You're live on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, and to the listeners.
Much appreciate your time.
To be here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Let's get straight to it. Understand as part of what I've just read, the intro, there's a very clear 6-priority plan that NSFAS has put in place, right? Or intend to do so. Tell me what that is.
Ashraf, as you have alluded, there are a number of structural problems that we are having. Others relate to the model that we are using as an organization. And the board has set for itself a plan that seeks to deal with all of these challenges in a form of us recovering from all these challenges that we are faced with as an organization. And one of those plans, you've mentioned the interface between ourselves and universities as one challenge that we are having. To deal with that, a majority of those problems emanates from the ICT problems. So we've made an assessment of the ICT challenges, and we are now going to implement a digital transformation strategy, which is currently under consideration by the board. And amongst the other things that the board is looking at is the organizational design and realignment. We want a fit-for-purpose institution. NSFAS was formed in 1991, and there are little reforms that took place. And one of the biggest developments that took place in 2018, which moved NSFAS from the loan to a bursary, never considered that organizational realignment. So we continued with the old structure, never realigned, regardless of the new challenges and assignments that were given to NSFAS. And again, 2 years ago, the loan scheme was brought back. And again, we were given less than 3 months or so to implement that. And that also created a challenge where we did not have a loan management strategy. Now, the board is currently sitting with that for consideration and for implementation. And one of the most critical ones as well is a sustainable funding framework. As I'm saying, we are sitting with debts that others are seated with the former loan recipients, but others are as a result of the model that we are using. For an example, this year we've got about 10, we have a shortfall of about 10.6 billion for us to fund the current students, and that money, it's not there. And we are currently engaging the Department of Higher Education and Training and Treasury for us to find resources to fund that debt. And also within the organization to find some other mechanisms to fund this debt because we do have some money, but it is meant for other things. So for us to shift that money to fund the students, we need Treasury and the department to concur. And lastly, the issues of the business model, operating model, that integrates universities, TVET colleges, and NSFAS. It's one of the things that the board is looking at and is committed to implement in the current financial year.
Okay. I mean, you've said lots of things. So do you agree as part of your statement that NSFAS at the moment has to move from instability to a vibrant, effective and future-ready institute, which does mean that you can see that NSFAS right now is an institute of instability?
Ashraf, you nailed it. We are currently in an unstable environment, and we want to progress towards stability. And that all these things that I've mentioned now would lead us towards attainment of that stability within NSFAS and externally. Externally, I'm referring to the clients that we are servicing, be it students, be it the institutions themselves.
Okay. What about As part of my intro, I spoke about the fact that there's just a lack of trust, really. Maybe that's just my words, but in essence, between the different stakeholders from NSFAS itself to the university authorities to student leadership groups and others, right? Just how bad is that distrust and how do you fix that?
Ashraf, with the challenges that are seated with NSFAS and the commitments that gets made by the scheme to fund students and our inability to implement 100% those commitments leads to that distrust we are talking about. So if we are upfront, for an example, in the issues of funding, the issues of disbursements and meeting the disbursement schedules and the payment of allowances to students, the distrust will be minimized. And this is exactly what this six-point plan is meant to do. That we need to regain the trust, we need to communicate to our stakeholders more often in relation to the challenges that we are faced with, so that they can appreciate the challenges that are organizationally based and the ones that are systematic based, because some of them, as I've alluded to the plan itself, you'll realize that some of them are systematic based from how the established act of NSFAS, and which needs the entire post-education and training system to look at. So we are working diligently with the University South Africa, which represent all universities. We are working with SAPCO, which represent our 50 TVET colleges, and the department itself, to make sure that we share as much information as possible on what the impediments are at NSFAS and how collectively we can deal with that.
Okay, and that's where we will leave it. Lots to reflect on. Ismail Nisi, the spokesperson for NSFAS. A lot to chew on, and I understand just from them, but also from all of us listening in. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated. And as we said, as has been reminded from the audience, to say, whatever we talk about, let's emphasize the solution. So here's it. What is the solution? 5:30, here's the news headlines.
In the headlines, the MPA has declined to formally enrol a case of a 21-year-old accused of sexually assaulting her 3-year-old son in the Eastern Cape. Taxi commuters in parts of Ekurhuleni, such as Germiston and Katlehong, east of Johannesburg, are without transport following taxi body Santaco's halting of operations in the area. And the UN Secretary General's called on Israel to allow access to food, water and medicines in Gaza. A full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N1 southbound is slow moving towards the N17 Soweto exit. Summit Road westbound in Midrand has delays at Blue Hills, and the R55 northbound in Centurion has a crash reported at the N14 highway. In KZN, the M4 has a crash near Virginia Airport, queuing traffic both ways. The M7 westbound queuing at the Bel Air Waxley Road junction, and on the M7, truck congestion in the Rosberg area, so expect delays. In Cape Town, the M5 northbound queuing towards Koeberg interchange, Baden-Powell Drive westbound in Khayelitsha, slow moving towards Jafta K Masimola Road, and Plattekloof Road eastbound, slow moving towards the N1 highway. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Okay, there's important World Cup qualifiers coming up, right? Therefore, the team is important to me.
Absolutely. Bafana coach Hugo Bruce has made a number of changes in his final 23-man squad for the upcoming 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers against Lesotho and Nigeria in Bloemfontein in September. There's notable changes, especially in the defense, with Kuliso Mudau missing out on selection and Orlando Pirates Mbegezile Mbogazi, who is set to make his senior national debut, selected. Ime Okon, with a dual citizenship of South Africa and Nigeria, is also a debutant in the side, with Zuko Mdunyelwa and Kulumani Ndamani giving additional options at the back. In terms of the goalkeeper and midfield department, it remains largely unchanged, with Kamagelo Sebelebele of Pirates earning his first call-up, joining Kaizer Chiefs Mduduzi Shabalala, Mahangota of Al Ittifaq, adds further experience in attack, while Fawaz Bazadine and Jaden Adams have been left out. Now, South Africa hosts Lesotho on the 5th of September at the Free State Stadium before welcoming continental giants Nigeria to that same venue 4 days later in what could prove decisive for their qualifying campaign. Here's Hugo Bruce on Mbogasi.
This is a player, and I didn't see that so much. But from the beginning, he showed me a very mature attitude. He's confident. He's strong. He has a good technique. He plays without fear. And this is special for a young player. And I was curious when he came with us in March to see him playing with the team, those friendly games. And I was assured that when I saw him playing, this was for me the proof that he's a very good player, a very good defender, and a very young one.
In cycling, 4-time Tour de France winner Chris Froome is set to undergo surgery after a serious training crash that saw the British cyclist airlifted to a hospital in France. Froome's team, Israel Premier Tech, said that he was stable and did not sustain any head injuries, but added that scans confirmed 5 broken ribs and a lumbar vertebrae fracture. In Nepal's SABC Sport has established that World Netball has issued an invoice demanding Netball South Africa to pay for legal fees for preliminary investigation conducted on suspended President Cecilia Molokwane. Molokwane was suspended in April amid a disciplinary process opened against her by World Netball following anonymous allegations made to the world governing body in correspondence seen by the public broadcaster. The invoice reflects the hearing was conducted on the 6th of August, with the outcome expected to be finalized by World Netball around December 2025. Then in rugby, Super Rugby will mark its 30th anniversary next year, with the first of 77 matches kicking off on the 13th of February. The Crusaders opened the season against the Highlanders. Each of the 11 teams in New Zealand and Australia's top club competition will play 14 matches across a 16-round regular season. The highest-ranked losing team from the qualifying finals will now progress as a 4th seed. Then in golf, Keegan Bradley insists that winning the Ryder Cup is the only thing that he cares about after being left heartbroken by leaving himself out of his captain's pick for the Bethpage Black. Now, Bradley was a consideration to being the first playing captain at Ryder Cup since Arnold Palmer in 1963, having won the Travelers Championship in June as part of an impressive season on the PGA Tour. The 39-year-old missed out on one of the 6 automatic qualification spots, finishing in 11th place, with Bradley still undecided whether to take on a dual role for Team USA ahead of him ending tied 7th at the season-ending Tour Championship. On that note,
Okay. I had people saying, any news on Ruben Amorim? No, there's no news about him.
Nothing.
Because they're worried, like what? But let me tell you an interesting thing I saw just now. It said they got home at 1 o'clock this morning, Man United, after losing to a team like effectively 3 divisions below them, right? It's crazy. He, Amorim, was at the training ground at 7 o'clock in the morning. And my thought about it is, okay, the players came at 11 o'clock, he came at 7. And that's because he did take a dose during the penalty shootout. So maybe that was fine. He had a power nap.
How long do you think he's going to last?
I don't know.
Like, how long do you think we're still going to see him in the dugout?
We'll have to see after the next game. It's really, I think, no, seriously. At this point in time, no matter what they've invested, the pressure on him to hold the fort with his numbers don't give any confidence. He hasn't won the league last year. He didn't win a cup, right? So he's on a day-to-day basis. And if they don't survive against Burnley at the weekend, then there's a break. Then if he survives, I think he's got Man City and Chelsea in a short period, and then Liverpool, like in a short period. So if he survives now, the next big post would be end of October. If they are 11th on the log in October, I can't see him surviving.
Well, let's wait and see.
The boardroom heat is on and the pressure is rising.
The Insurance Apprentice, hosted by the one and only Babi Moloi, is delivering drama, tough decisions, and big personalities every week. Expect bold moves, emotional twists, and contestants you'll either root for or roast. And yes, you'll be surprised what you learn about insurance along the way. Open up to The Insurance Apprentice, Thursdays at 7 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
I'm Michelle Constant. Join the JSB crew and I every Saturday and Sunday morning between 7 and 10 a.m. We promise to keep you informed and entertained with innovation, culture, cars, travel, life learnings, environment, and of course, your big fat juicy. Small stories, big ideas, massive inspiration. The Jet Set Breakfast on SAFM.
SAFM brings you the Women's Circle on Friday, the 29th of August, live at Sandton Hotel, celebrating the business of arts and women in South Africa. Tune in to the Full Circle with Bridget Masenga from 1 to 3 p.m. as we unpack a generational conversation with a captivating panel this Women's Month. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, the SAFM market update comes up 6 to 7. Jimmy, you got stories about Harmony, right?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon to the listeners. I certainly do. I've got a conversation with the financial director at Harmony around their results. They gave us an update bright and early this morning. They were the first SENS updates to come through this morning on the performance for the year that was. We've also got a conversation with the team at Rainbow Chicken around their year. This is their first full year as a listed entity, so we're going to speak to the CEO around that and around how they have fared this year. And then we've got a conversation with the team at Standard Bank around the township entrepreneurs that they are supporting. They recently hosted their Kasi Summit Awards in KZN, and we're going to be speaking to them around that and around the importance of their value towards that ecosystem. Then we've got a conversation with the team at South African Breweries around getting creative in the beer industry. And then, because it's Thursday, we're going to wrap up the show with a small business conversation. We're going to speak to an SME, the founder of Beauty on Tap, and we're going to get a sense of how she built the business and, more importantly, how well the business is doing. The business has been around for 10 years this year, and they've achieved some significant milestones in that time. We're going to take a look at that business and what lies ahead for it. Before we get to those conversations, a sense of how the markets have been moving. It has been a bit of a choppy day, bit of mixed movements on the equity side of it. Some markets up, some markets down. In Asian markets, the only loser on the day was the Hang Seng, down about 0.8%. The Shanghai index was up about 1% and the Nikkei was up about 0.75%. In European markets, also a bit of a mixed bag. The DAX in Germany down about 5 basis points. Not really too much to be concerned about there, but the FTSE down 0.4%, whilst the CAC 40 was up 0.33%. And if we look at the US markets at the moment, the Nasdaq is up, the S&P is marginally up, and the Dow Jones is down at the moment. So interesting up and down kind of movements in international markets. Local markets, very similar in that if we look at our sectors, industrials were down 0.1%, for resources down 1.5%, but financials up almost a full percent. As a result, the all share only down about 0.14%, and the top 40 0.14% to the red as well. The currency side of things, the rand 17.69 is what $1 would cost you right now. 23 rand 92 is one British pound. We're almost back at 24 rand there. That's not a good thing. Anyone traveling to Europe, the euro is currently at 20 rand and 65 cents, whilst the Australian dollar is at 11 rand 85. If we look at 11 rand 55. If we look at the price of a Bitcoin, $112,000 odd a Bitcoin. In rand terms, 1.994-ish million rand there, so just shy of the 2 million rand mark. I suppose we probably will go a little back above the 2 million rand mark owing to potentially a weaker rand or even just a strengthening of the Bitcoin price. But a quick look at commodities before we go. The gold price back above $3,400 a fine ounce. $3,407 at the moment. The Brent crude price, $67.60 or 65 cents a barrel. And platinum and palladium holding steady, 1,349 in the case of platinum, 1,125 in the case of palladium. We're going to be taking a look at market movements with Sanlam Wealth's Nick Kunz. I've got a couple of questions around how he's reading market sentiment at the moment, and perhaps some of the other numbers that came out today. The likes of Impala gave us numbers today as well that we didn't get a chance to speak to from that perspective. So we're going to get a sense of just how South African companies are performing, but also what we can look forward to as we wrap up the month of August. But these conversations come up after the 6 p.m. news. For now, Ashraf, back to you.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for that. You have a great show. Looking forward to that, Jimmy. And of course, you, as in whoever you are, including Butana and Solomon, well, I want to hear from you next.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Okay, lots of thoughts about Anas Fas. Butana, you've got a view. Go for it.
Good evening, my brother.
Good evening.
We have been defrauded.
Yeah.
We have been defrauded by deployees of comrades, the crooks. They have to be removed there, and not only removed, prosecuted. How do you oversubscribe? How do you oversubscribe? You don't know your budget. You don't know what is available there. They've been fooling children there, knowing that they oversubscribe. They don't have enough money. And guess what? Those accommodations are full, they're owned by comrades. We have been defrauded.
Okay.
Like crooks.
Yeah. So you believe you've made your point very clear, Butana, they've been defrauded. I wonder who's going to challenge you on that point, right? Butana, thank you for that. Solomon, let's get your thoughts. You want to talk about Max, right? Solomon, hi.
Good afternoon, Ashraf.
Yeah, good afternoon. Go for it.
Yes, it is quite unfortunate that a brother of African origin would come online and say the white regime did a great job to South Africa compared to what is happening now. Well, people are entitled to their views, but I think we should at least have the modicum of appreciating facts when it comes to this point. When you compare what the apartheid regime did and what the current dispensation tried to correct, surely you would agree that life is better, but at the same time not meaning that there are no issues that are bedeviling South Africans like any other nation. Issues of corruption, issues of the stagnating economy, and a whole lot of things like porous borders and everything. But at some point, a component from the presidency under the monitoring and evaluation released a report, a comparative kind of study, which said the access to services, the total number of kilometers tarred, access to electricity, water, the middle class, and everything else, which points to the fact that apartheid regime was worse and curtailed and thwarted the potential of the South Africans as a nation in general. But there are issues that we have to deal with. We must agree. We must be honest to say what are the issues that we are faced with.
Well,
but to say, Ashraf, but to say the white regime did a good job, no, man, I think it's a disservice to say the least.
Well, I mean, Solomon, you're right. Two things. I think if you look at the present tense, it is an indictment on democratic South Africa that so many people are even thinking about the good old days of the past, that how can it ever be that we can even think like that, which does speak very poorly of the current leadership and mismanagement of our country on the one hand. On the other hand, I agree with you, and that's why I even told the caller, I mean, what about apartheid? Like, how can you ever think about those days as better, because you're not thinking about narrow percentages. You have to look at what was right for the whole country, and it can never have been better than what it is now, even though what is now, a lot of it is wrong. But there, it was institutional and fundamentally wrong, and that can never be acceptable. So I think I concur with you 100%. Solomon, thanks for that. Right, let's get to some of the other callers we've had in terms of WhatsApp comments. I don't know why people want to talk about Chiefs all the time suddenly.
Yay, Kings and Chiefs. We are back. I was born in the Kings and Chiefs. Yeah. While other people, when they get bored, they are given the nappies, the blankets. I got the Kaizer Chiefs jersey at birth.
And when last have you worn it? That's all I want to know.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. It's Shata in Mokhalong, Wamaleji. So, Ashraf, next week, China will be hosting its biggest military parade. Kim Jong-un of North Korea will be there. Vladimir Putin will be there. So, I'm asking if Mr. Ramaphosa will also be going there.
All right, we'll do some tracking on that one there. You know, he was in Japan just last week and then India, right? So I'm not too sure, but we'll find out.
Yeah, sure. I'll tell you something. I didn't know where you were from, but when you said mineral, I said, Nkaya means homeboy. Roy Mirage, Eastern Cape.
Did I really say that? No, I'm very much Joburg based. Let me just tell you that much there. So if mineral sounded like mineral from KZN, for example, that's an error. No, it's definitely mineral for me. Thank you.
Hi, Ashraf, and also all the other presenters on SAFM. When somebody gives a dissenting voice note or says something, you guys don't need to correct it to agree to your narrative. Not all white people were for apartheid, but there were systems that worked, and give credit where credit is due. Things have worked. The DA has done a wonderful job in some of the towns that they run, despite the ANC. And if a caller wants to say something, let him say that. Don't shut it down and try and change a narrative. That caller is perfectly entitled to their opinion. It continually seems to me, and I've phoned in a number of times, but you don't play my voice notes, that you guys at SABC are actually the voice piece for the ANC. You can't act like that. You need to be an independent broadcaster. You're not the mouthpiece for the government of the day. Thanks. Have a good afternoon.
Well, I'll tell you what, you said so many different things. I don't know where you got this thing that we don't play your voice notes. I don't even know. I don't even know you, if you get my point, right? Number one. Number two, if people make comments and especially on an institutional story like apartheid and suggesting it was better then, how do we? What I mean, we can't convince him otherwise. But why would we not challenge him? I mean, why would we not challenge him? And as far as us being the mouthpiece for the ANC, let me just say it up front so you can get it. 90% of the problems of the poor leadership in our country right now can only be given or attributed to the leadership of those who are leading, which is the African National Congress. Does that make any sense to you now?
Good afternoon, Ashraf and your listeners. This is Nati from Cape Town. Can you please ask your guest there with regards to IP? Yes. Will I be protected if ever I name something under my surname and I patent it? Remember that it's not only me who's using my surname, but there are a lot of people who have the similar surname as me. Thank you.
Okay, he's gone, unfortunately. I do think you'd... Look, I don't know if he's going to tell us now, but we probably need some further advice on intellectual property and things like that, because it is very important whether you can, well, I don't think you can patent your surname as your surname because there's 100 other people with the same name. That's what I think. But listen, maybe we need to follow it up with an intellectual property lawyer who can talk about it in detail because it is important. I know people who effectively start an email what their children's name, even when the child is like 1 month old, because they just want that name. Otherwise, you may take it. For example, if you get my point. This is the National Pulse.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
This week on FC Meets, Tisetso and Bandile sit down with Mamelodi Sundowns ladies dribbling wizard Lehlohonolo Mashego. Find out about her rise to the top of women's football on the African continent and what motivates her to aim even higher. Tune in to SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 this Saturday, 30 August at 6 p.m. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus. FC Meets, football made for community by community. Richencha Game, proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love
SAFM celebrates its 89th birthday this month by giving listeners an exclusive opportunity to attend the prestigious Joy of Jazz taking place at the Sandton Convention Centre from the 26th to the 28th of September 2025. To stand a chance to win these sought-after tickets, simply SMS SAFM 89 followed by your name to 41391 and stay tuned to SAFM as we could be calling you. SAFM is the official media partner for the Dipala stage at the Standard Bank Joy of Jazz. Entries open from the 7th of August and close on the 31st of August 2025. Winners will be randomly selected and called from the 1st of September 2025. SMSs are charged at R1.50 per SMS. Free SMSs and SMS bundles do not apply. T's and C's apply. You're listening to the National Pulse.
Right, let's get to further comments from you, because you were on the Pulse. Ruben in Mbombela. Ruben, go for it.
Ashraf, thank you very, very much.
It's a pleasure, man.
So the most subtle way of putting it is like your Mandelas, your Sisulus, your whoever died during and suffered during the apartheid era, we deserved it. This is what the gentleman is saying when he says the whites were better, were treating us better than we are currently going through, whatever we're going through now. So the softest and the English, what he's saying actually to the South Africans, I'm not talking about those who came from the neighboring states, those who were in the country, in this country, who were born in this country. Ashraf, I might have gone outside the country visiting and staying outside the country, but to be told by one African brother that, the whites were much better than what we are going through. In this country, in 2025, Ashraf, what have we done as South Africans to deserve this insult? Welcoming the people who had come from the neighboring states, welcoming the people who had come from the globe, from the world, outside the country, and now they're telling us in our faces. Ashraf, this is like saying to the nation, go to hell. Go to hell.
Okay.
This is heavy.
You. Ruben, here's the thing, just in conclusion on that one there. I mean, I hear what you said, and you've obviously heard my thoughts before, right? Clearly, it is very, very troublesome when someone makes that type of comment, right? Which, I think the person is factually incorrect as well anyway, right? He's entitled to his opinion, but he's incorrect factually. On the other hand, this is the other thought. What is it that makes that type of person think like that? That means for someone who's not so hang up with being philosophical about the past and the human rights culture and the absence of it in apartheid and simply is worried about service delivery, what would get that person think that those days were better? Because that person may see an absence of day-to-day service delivery in their communities. And now that is a separate story, but it's also an indictment on those who lead us right now. So if you can get my point there's a dichotomy between the two. Ruben, thank you for that. And that really is a challenge to those who lead to say, come on, how can you, when someone says those days were better, that's an indictment on you as well. On their judgment, but also on you too. And you better change that. Let's talk electricity.
Ashraf, Anonymous from Mpumalanga. Ashraf, the energy analyst you have on studios talking about electricity, I am shocked. I'm shocked. We need to wake up as South Africans. That guy needs to come back, Ashraf, and repeat the same message that he was giving. You cannot tell me that it's actually 24 cents per kilowatts in terms of production, but we are being charged, they are saying it's 54, and then they are charging us 5 rands. South Africans, we need to wake up, really. We need to take this thing serious. Same as Mkwanazi's allegations. This one must be handled the same. Thank you, Anonymous from Mpumalanga. Yeah.
Okay, he needs to come back. He's not going to come back now, not now. Maybe, as someone has said, get maybe another nuanced view of that, which I think we may concede on that, yeah.
Hi, Joe from Durban. One of the reasons for Eskom's high operating cost, which of course gets passed on to the consumer, is the deliberately bloated, inefficient, unnecessary middle management. created to create employment for friends and family, and in no small way is part of the problem. Getting rid of it means losing votes, and therefore that doesn't happen. Clearly, the input costs for businesses and new businesses with high energy tariffs, inefficient labor, etc., is the big impediment to job creation and growth of the economy. So it's a lose-lose at the moment.
Well, it is lose-lose unless we fix it up.
Ashraf, good afternoon, man. Flores from the beautiful Winelands. Ashraf, talking about food and stuff that tastes different. Let me tell you, America was the birthplace of Coke. Does not even use real sugar in their Coke. They import their Coke from Mexico because the Mexicans use real sugar. Yeah, I never drink Coke when I go there because it's just tasteless. I rather drink Mountain Dew or Dr. Pepper's or root beer. Have a good summer, bye.
Oh, goodness. Root beer. I used to read those Archie comics and they had root beer. That's a long time ago.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. I don't believe what the caller said there about the apartheid regime that they did well. No, I don't. But the current government must ensure. People have now reason to say so many things. You know, people are frustrated. People are saying things out of frustration. And those who are defending the current government should know that. People are frustrated. Thank you, Maru.
Thanks for that. I'll tell you what, let's end with this. There's the newly published report of party political funding, right? And it makes for interesting reading in terms of three parties. Action SA's declared funding 520,000 rands. And of that, 520,000 comes from Herman Mashaba personally. Okay, so totally funding is his party. Then the ANC has declared 7,661,000, all coming from the Chancellor House Trust, which, as you know, would be this investment company that where they channel monies through. And then the DA, 32 million, and of those, the big numbers from Fynbos, who gave 10 million and another 15 million as well. Those were the bigger ones. And I think that's the big, and there's one thing called Main Street, 1,465,000 as well. That's the biggest ones of them all, and there's a whole lot of others like 250 and 500,000. Perhaps another conversation for tomorrow in terms of party political funding. I hope you enjoyed the show. As always, it's the National Pulse. Listen to the podcast, download them, go to the SAFM website, download, share that, debate it with your families as well, and there you are. You'll have your own National Pulse dialogue wherever you may be. Thanks for listening. We'll do it again tomorrow. Here's the news with Greg House.
Thank you again, Ashraf. More than 100 police dockets returned to the political killings task team and taxi commuters stranded in Ekululeni. Good evening. The National Police Commissioner, Fani Masemola, says 121 police dockets will be returned to the political killings task team after they were removed from the unit. The KwaZulu-Natal